wish I knew how to quit eating bugs.
This seems so weird.
There's no place like home.
I'm gonna make him an offer down with you.
Welcome to another episode of Gone for the Win. We're here to talk about the Gotham Awards that dropped last week, and the Hollywood Music and Media Awards. We're also going to talk about our predictions for what could be nominated for Best Song and Score. As Dan's not here this week, we sent him away on assignment, but Luis is here. Luis, how's it going?
That's going pretty good. I'm finally going to start doing some press screenings this week. I'm hopefully going to be seeing Poor Things this Thursday, so I'm really excited to check that out.
So we do have some guests here today. We've got Chad. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Always fun when Oscar season rolls around. So, let's talk about it.
And we've also got Dylan. Dylan, how's it going?
It's going well. Also in the midst of, as everyone has said, Oscar season, screener season. It's very busy time of year, but it's an exciting time of year because now, all but a few films have been at least seen by people. And so there's a better understanding of what movies are getting in where and certain things like that, as opposed to a few months ago when, so much was a question mark. So that's going to be fun today, especially with music too, because it's like those songs you really don't know until you heard them,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones like, it was why I was sort of saving this topic when either the shortlist come out or I completely forgot the Hollywood Music and Media is a thing too. So when that came out, I was like, yeah, this is a good excuse to actually talk about it now. But as I like to start this off, Luis, what have you watched in the past week?
Well, I rewatched Killers of the Flower Moon to see if I still felt the same way, and I would say I still do. It's definitely going to end up being one of my favorites of the year, but I don't know if it's going to be like an absolute favorite. It's probably going to be my top 10. I don't think it'll be like top 5 necessarily. I still think it's a little long. I noticed on rewatch that I liked when Jesse Plemons' character in the FBI come in at the end there. I kind of like where the tone of the film kind of goes from there. And but yeah, I still feel about the same way about that film. I really like it, but I just don't think it's going to be the movie that beats Oppenheimer. Well, I'm trying to think what else I watched. It was pretty busy this week, and I'm catching up to a lot of stuff, dang it. But what else did I watch? I could have swore. Give me a quick second here, because I know I'm gonna regret. I'm just gonna check my Letterboxd diary real quick, because I know I'm gonna regret not mentioning something. Oh, okay. So I saw Nyad, and I did want to mention this. I saw Nyad. Now, this movie's been getting pretty mixed reception, and I think there's going to be a bit of a generational gap because I've noticed like older critics or older viewers in general seem to like the movie more than younger folks do. I liked it, but I will say that I was a little taken aback that the controversy around the fact that her swim hasn't necessarily been officially certified and accepted, and I guess there's some controversy there with the swimming community in regards to that. I was kind of surprised they didn't really touch on that at all. Even when they did the little like at the end, when they showed like what happened afterwards and where everybody was and such. I was really surprised by that, and I wonder if that could be a controversy that ultimately leads to Benning and Foster missing out. But I think Foster stands out more than Benning. I think if either of them are going to get in, it's probably going to be Foster, especially if, say, Color Purple completely flops. That opens up a room for Foster in supporting actress. And finally, I mentioned that it was Godzilla Day on Friday, and I'm a huge Godzilla fan, so I watched the original Godzilla and Shin Godzilla, and always enjoyable. My top 2 favorites of the Godzilla movies. And yeah, that's what I got for you this week. But yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of catching up in the coming weeks. So,
Chad, what did you watch in the past week?
Oh, that is a good question. Probably the best one that I've watched, well, best new one I should say, is I watched Quiz Lady on Hulu. I thought that was actually a really, really fun movie. I thought it was very funny, and it actually made me appreciate Awkwafina again, because the past like few years she's just been annoying the shit out of me because she's been doing the same thing, and then now this is like maybe kind of going back to her being in the farewell, where it's a little more muted but still very funny. I've also been prepping as Dylan and I will normally talk about. We do a show called Picture This together. We watch Best Picture nominated movies. So we're trying to watch all of them. And right now we're prepping for our 1985 episode because The Color Purple. So I watched The Color Purple. I watched, what was the
Witness.
Kiss of the Spider Woman and Witness so far. So I got the other two to watch soon. Before that, it was just a bunch of horror, and in the theater, the most recent ones I saw were Taylor Swift: The Eras Tour, Fire, and then also Killers of the Flower Moon, which I thought was pretty good, but it is one that I think, unless you just loved it right out of the gate, I think it is one that is worth a rewatch just to pick up on the little things that are planted throughout and stuff like that to try to get a bigger grasp about how you feel about the movie and stuff. So I look forward to when that drops on Apple Plus.
And Dylan, what have you watched in the past week?
Yeah, so right after October ended, it was kind of like taking a breath and not watching a ton. Honestly, catching up more with TV, specifically reality TV. This is the only time ever that Amazing Race, Survivor, and Big Brother have all been on at the same time, and that's because of the strike. So I watched a lot of that. In terms of movies, the newest release I saw in theaters was Priscilla. I finally got around to that because, as Chad knows, I slept through my New York Film Fest screening of it. I thought it was at 3:00. It was at 12:00. So I woke up at 11:30, and it was too far away to get there. So I finally caught up to it. Gorgeous film. I think it's Sofia Coppola's best. I can't wait to talk about it more in the coming weeks as it gets closer to Oscar season, or coming months, I should say. In terms of literally this past week, though, the only things I watched movie-wise were actually 2 rewatches. I went home for the weekend to finally celebrate my mother's birthday with my whole family, and whenever I'm home, we like to watch a movie that is a little bit more generally accessible for everyone, that everyone will enjoy. So we watched No Hard Feelings in theater camp because that's kind of broad comedies. No Hard Feelings I thought was better on rewatch. Theater camp not as much, only because it's comedy. It's the first time you hear the joke is always going to be the best time you hear the joke. So comedy's subjective, but those movies are still 2 of my favorite comedies of the year. So it's fun to kind of show them to my family. So otherwise, just TV and a lot of rest now that I don't have to watch a horror movie every day.
Yeah, for me in the past week, I've been I didn't have to prep for ranking like I normally do. I was free to catch up on some stuff that I had not got around to seeing yet. I finally got around to watching the Super Mario Brothers movie. As someone who's really not a big Mario Brothers fan, it was a good movie. It was fine. It's just one of those ones I don't know anything about Mario, so I probably wouldn't have picked up on any of the references or anything. I also watched the movie Robots on Amazon Prime with Shailene Woodley and Jack Whitehall. I've heard a lot of stuff about that. I actually had a lot of fun with that movie. I thought it was actually a pretty good premise. I feel like they could have done more with it if in that. I finally go around seeing Living. Bill Nighy was really deserved of the Oscar nomination last year for it. I think thought it was great. And obviously, last one I will mention is I finally go around seeing Cocaine Bear, which was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But with that, we're going to move on. The only just going to jump straight into the main topics. We had the Gotham Awards drop nominations announced last week. I believe the ceremony is November 27th. It's one of those ones this year they actually removed the budget cap requirements, which means they weren't restricting it to under $35 million, which led to some interesting nominations you probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. But jumping straight into this, the nominations for Best Feature was Passages, which is a French romantic drama movie. Past Lives, Reality, which is Sydney Sweeney in that showing up, and 1001. But Lewis, what are your thoughts about the nominations for Best Feature at the Gothams?
Well, I looked it up, and usually in the past, the Gotham Awards have obviously been about smaller movies. Though, from what I understand, a lot, even though they had taken off the limit, a lot of major studios didn't even go ahead and submit anyway. So, like Warner Brothers submitting Barbie, for instance, was apparently an outlier. But regardless, what wins picture at Gotham tends to not necessarily, it's not very common that it goes on to win the Oscar, which makes sense because it has always been smaller movies. Though it should be pointed out that last year Everything Everywhere won here, one picture. So I was like looking at these nominees and seeing if anything here could potentially kind of start building some momentum here. And obviously the only real contender here in terms of going past just the Gotham's into award season is Past Lives, which I think is probably the favorite to win here. I was actually surprised that All of Us Strangers didn't get into feature because it seemed to get, or what did All of Us Strangers? Oh, I see why. Because All of Us Strangers showed up in another category. We'll talk about that's why, and I guess they're not allowed to compete for feature if it's on there. So yeah, it does look to me like Past Lives is the movie to beat here. I'll be very surprised if anything beats it. If anything that might beat it, maybe I would say keep an eye on 1001 because I've seen a lot of hype behind that in terms of in the indie film community. But I think Past Lives is the movie to beat here.
Chad, what are your thoughts about the nominations for Best Feature?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't disagree with Lewis here, because it's Past Lives is the only one on here that's been like talked about as far as like a big Best Picture contender for the Oscars. And we were wondering if maybe it was going to fall off because it came out a little earlier and stuff like that, but it seems like it's still kind of holding on. I haven't personally seen it yet, but I've been meaning to get into it after October. So I'm looking to check it out soon. Now that's like a $5 rental. But yeah, everyone that I've heard of that has seen Past Lives said it's fantastic. So I look forward to seeing that one. The only other one I've seen is 1001. And I saw that back at the online Sundance. And I really thought that was like an incredible like first feature. Although I do owe it a rewatch because it's not like currently in my top 10 or anything like that. But no, I agree. If any of these has a shot to challenge Past Lives, I think it would be 1001 because that's the other one that I've heard everyone talked about as being like, yeah, but I just have heard less conversation about it than Past Lives. And the other ones I've heard like a little bit, I think, about Reality, but the other ones I don't even really know what they are, and that's on me. I need to check them out.
And Dylan, what are your thoughts about the nominations for Best Feature?
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what some of you all have said about just the Gotham Awards and the budget cap. I think, honestly, I think the merit of the Gotham Awards was that you could recognize smaller films. So I think Warner Brothers submitting Barbie is a little. I get why they did. They're just trying to get as many awards as possible for it, but it's like it just kind of goes against the spirit of it. So I'm glad like Oppenheimer didn't get submitted. I'm glad Killers of the Flower Moon. Some of these bigger films, even if some of them are more independently, processed, like they go through the process of what an independent feature would, and then they get distribution later, let's say. I still think a lot of these studio films, like there's no reason the Warner Brothers highest grossing film of the year should be in the Gotham Awards, in my opinion. That being said, I think this is a very interesting year in general, and especially with Best Feature, the fact that none of these movies are up for screenplay and only 2 of them are up for director. So it's really an interesting kind of separation from most of your award shows where you kind of see the same films getting nominated for director, screenplay, and picture and some acting awards. Here we see only 1001 is also in breakthrough director and Past Lives is in breakthrough director, and the other 3 films don't show up anywhere else but some performances. So I think that's kind of what's interesting about Gotham Awards and what's a little hard to predict, because it's like, why would you ever predict Past Lives without a screenplay nomination? But the truth is none of these have a screenplay nomination. So it's like kind of one of those things where you just kind of go off of the hype. And I agree with these 2 guys over here. I think Past Lives is the favorite. I'm slacking here. I've only seen 3 of the 5 of these, but I think of the ones I've seen, I actually think Passages is one that shouldn't be slept on. I think it's really good. I saw it over the summer. I did a little podcast about it. It's pretty good. 1001 I didn't like as much as Chad. We both watched it for Sundance, though I think the performances in it are really good. But I think Past Lives is still the one I would pick, even though I think Passages is underrated. I think Past Lives is just, it's just a little bit of a league above the rest, but I haven't seen the other ones. And I know when we did our top 10 of the year so far, Sean brought up Showing Up on that. So I'm excited to see that eventually, because I liked First Cow a lot and I love Kelly Reichardt. So I think it's a very interesting group of movies because it's not necessarily nominated in director and screenplay. Like it's kind of, the Gothams are staying true to just awarding what they think is best and not necessarily going for what's going to rack up the most nominations, which I kind of appreciate. But I think Past Lives, this is kind of a safe bet. And while these don't really correlate to the Oscars as much, I think in past years we've seen at least one or two of the nominees at least be in the conversation. I think Past Lives is going to be that one this year, whereas last year I think Everything Everywhere All at Once and Tar and After Sun all kind of got Oscar buzz, which was nice. Whereas here I think a lot of the more Oscar buzzy titles are in international, which we'll talk about in a sec. So
I have seen none of these. As far as I know, only Past Lives has been released in New Zealand. The other four have not. But yeah, like I've been meaning to get around to Past Lives, but just sort of quickly talking about the budget cap. Like it's one of those ones like with the budget cap. I mean, I don't mind overly about too much about Barbie. While I do actually agree with Dylan's point, like Barbie is the highest grossing movie of the year. um, but yeah, but it's just one of those ones like I mean, I think the studios are probably not going to try and get like things like something that's 300, something that's clearly not indie. I think 100 million and under, I think is around the range where you could argue for indie from there. But
even
yeah,
then, Barbie was 145, so that's exceeding.
Yeah, I know. But despite that, I'm surprised that it didn't get into Best Feature. So I actually find that really interesting. But
It
that
might
being
be
said,
it might be because some of the voters are also having that thought too. Like, are we really going to award
yeah,
this in best picture? Because they can, but doesn't mean they necessarily have to. I think because a lot of people still want to keep in the spirit of it. That's at least my thought. Because yeah, you're right. There's no reason it wouldn't get nominated because everyone loves it and has seen it.
yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Past Lives is a fair favorite here from what I've heard about it. And just going back past the past, like I think majority of the past winners have all been sort of nominated for Best Picture. There's a couple of years where the winner wasn't nominated, but for the most part, the winner always seems to end up in nominations. Moving on to Best Screenplay, we've got All of Us Strangers, Anatomy of a Fool, May December, RMN, and The Zone of Interest. Dylan, what are your thoughts about the nominees for Best Screenplay?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think it's surprising that none of the best feature nominees got nominated in best screenplay. I don't know if there's like a voting kind of stipulation with that or anything, but I've seen. I'm slacking on this one too. I've only seen 2 of the 5 of these. Anatomy of a Fall, I need to see. It's out. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, even though I've heard that is a very, very good screenplay. It's all about its screenplay, I've heard. All of Us Strangers seems to be kind of just the favorite in general across the board because it has so many nominations and because it's been getting glowing positive reviews. But personally, of the 2 I've seen, I haven't even heard of RMN, but Zone of Interest and May December. I think Zone of Interest is very interesting because it's not really a screenplay movie. I mean, obviously there is a screenplay, but it's all about the visual atmosphere, tone and direction, that it's honestly surprising that screenplay is where they decided to nominate it amongst other things. So I think that's kind of just like the nomination is the win for that film. Whereas I think May December, I love that screenplay so much. I think it's so fun. It's way funnier than I expected it to be, but it does still keep to its dark root, which I really like. It's a very dark comedy, and in the end, it's not a comedy. It's one of those things that's so layered and multifaceted and complex. So my vote would be for May December, but pending a watch of All of Us Strangers and Anatomy of a Fall. Once I watch those, I'd probably have a few other ones that I'd champion. But right now, what I think is going to win of these 5, I think it's probably going to be All of Us Strangers or Anatomy of a Fall. My gut would say Anatomy of a Fall, only because that one feels more of a screenplay movie, whereas All of Us Strangers could win in other places and Zone of Interest could win in other places. So I think this would be where they would award Anatomy of a Fall, because I don't think she got nominated for that, which is also something to talk about later. But yeah, so I think this is where they might award that one.
Chad, what are your thoughts about the screenplay nominations?
Unlike Dylan, I've actually seen none of these. I recently had a child, so I can't get out to the theater as much as I used to, unfortunately. But I'll get there. I'll be able to go back soon. But yeah, I really want to see most of these. Yeah, like the like Dylan, the only one that I haven't heard of is RMN. But the rest of them, well, maybe except for May, December, the rest of them seem to be like best picture, like in the conversation at least. Some of them maybe more than others. But yeah, Anatomy of a Fall is the only one out of these that I've heard like just great things about. In particular, its screenplay and just the film in general. And looking at the trailer for that one, it's the only one that I've actually seen the trailer and really want to see. The rest I kind of do want to see, but I think if I had to pick one, yeah, I'd go with Anatomy of a Fall, just out of feeling, because I've heard a lot about it. So
Louis, what are your thoughts about the nominees for best screenplay?
Well, I think it's going to be much more competitive than feature, because I can see a world where they go with Anatomy of Fall. I can see a world where they go for Strangers. I can even see a world where they decide to just give it a Zone of Interest, even though, I mean, I have not seen Zone of Interest, but from what I've heard, it's not necessarily very dialogue based. So, but I can see a world where they just like the movie enough that they go ahead and give it that, because of the adaptation that that script had to do. Maybe even May, December, because the Gothams do at times try to spread the love a little. RMN, I don't know if anybody's heard of that movie until they nominated. But I think it I'm starting. I was going to say All for Strangers, but as I've listened to these guys, I think Anatomy of a Fall really could be where they go, because this could be where they decide to award it, whereas All for Strangers could be awarded elsewhere. I have noticed that Anatomy of a Fall so far seems to be getting pretty good audience scores. So this is a movie that isn't just a hit with critics, but with audiences, which is nice to see, because while I have not gotten to see Anatomy of Fall just yet, I did hear some concerns from people as to whether it would be accessible, because I guess there was some complaints as to whether Sandra Hüller's character might come off unlikable to some mainstream audiences, but it does seem to be a hit with audiences from all the scores I've been following. All for Strangers, it's definitely a big critical hit, but I've been noticing a little bit more pushback from some folks who have seen it at other festivals. So I've been noticing its strength. Well, maybe not its strength, but its reception not be as sky high. I think speak of the devil like Dan. I know he thought it was just decent because he just recently saw it in Miami. Now I'm finally going to go see All for Strangers next week if things go right, and I'm very interested in the film. But I do think this is going to be more competitive than feature. But I think these guys have convinced me that this might be where they go with Anatomy of a Fall.
Yeah. So I mean, like I haven't seen any of these. May December, I think, comes out on Netflix in December. Is that, am I right in that?
It's either Thanksgiving or like early December. I can't remember. It's
Yeah.
soon. It's in the next few weeks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it when it comes out. And yeah, just a quick note on whoever talked about the director of Anatomy of a Fall not being a director. in the Gothams they call it breakthrough director, so it's all directorial debuts, and Justin Triet's directed other stuff before Natalie Fall. So yeah, that's kind of the difference they have there.
Yeah, I knew it wouldn't get nominated there. I'm talking more about lead performance. That's the one where I'm like surprised by. Yeah.
That okay, yeah.
Yeah.
uh, but but yeah, but yeah, I think it's probably more likely to be an Anatomy of Fall just from what I've heard and all that. But watch this movie. No one's really heard about Iron Man. Just be a steamroller. It's like, but moving on to best documentary feature, they've got 20 Days in Mariupol, Against the Tide, Apollina, Four Daughters, and Our Body. Louis, what are your thoughts about best documentary feature?
I mean, we'll see what happens, but I wonder if this is a best feature all over again, where maybe the winner's a little bit too obvious, because 20 Days in Mariupol really sticks out to me, because that's not only a potential major documentary contender, but I think it's Ukraine's official submission for international feature. And considering all the stuff that's been going on with the news and such, I can see a situation where that movie really has, especially if it's going to end up being an Oscar contender, maybe it just ends up starting some buzz by winning this. I have not heard of any of these others. I think I've heard a little bit about Four Daughters. But I am very interested in checking out 20 Days in Mariupol, because next to Beyond Utopia, I think that's the one that I keep hearing as being a potential big documentary contender. Could be an international feature as well, because we've seen that sometimes where they get into documentary and international. So I mean, again, this is name recognition bias on my part, but I think 20 Days in Mariupol might be the one to beat here, especially since it's the big Oscar contender.
Chad, what are your thoughts about the nominees for documentary?
Yeah, I mean, maybe maybe not, but maybe we'll end up agreeing on a lot of stuff. But yeah, I'm in agreement here on this one. I actually haven't seen any of these, but I have heard good things about 20 Days in Mariupol. I mean, it won what was it, the best Sundance World Cinema Documentary Competition at the Sundance Film Festival. So
the audience award, yeah.
Yeah, so it already won an award at Sundance, and I've heard great things. So the other ones just haven't heard of. So I think because of name recognition and people saying great things about it, it already won an award previously, and that now it's nominated. It's probably going to go on to win this one here.
Dylan, what are your thoughts about this documentary category?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that's 20 Days in Mariupol is definitely the favorite. It's funny that one won the World Audience Award, and Beyond Utopia won the U.S. Audience Award, and I chose to watch that one for Sundance. So I never got to actually see 20 Days in Mariupol. I watched Beyond Utopia, but I definitely think Four Daughters could give it a run for its money because of the Palme d'Or nomination and competing at Cannes. I think that could help it. But then looking at the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards, because Critics' Choice has their own documentary awards that they've already released nominations for. Four Daughters didn't get any. So I think this is 20 Days in Mariupol is the only one here that it's nominated for any Critics' Choice Awards. The other three, I think, are just happy to be there. But I think if there's going to be anything to spoil, it could be Four Daughters. But again, the Gothams don't necessarily go for the conventional pick. But I think right now, if you just look at the five, what would be the favorite to win any award of these five is probably 20 Days. So I agree with these guys.
Yeah, this is one of those things where like I think like 20 Days could unfortunately for them become the favorite in the documentary race at the Oscars as well. And we all know what happens to the favorites, but
they get snubbed every year.
But it's also one of those ones that I think that despite it looking like it's going to be a favorite, because I've seen it in a lot of being nominated in a lot of places and a lot of film festivals, loving it and that. But yeah, it's one of those ones that if it ends up winning documentary, people you go to get people go, oh, they're just doing it so they can have some political statement at the Oscars about Ukraine and all that. I mean, if it's a good documentary, it deserves to win. And I mean, I haven't seen it, but it's one that if I ever come across it, I'm actually interested in seeing it, just because, like, from what I've heard about it, it's really raw and like ready for what is happening in that. And but it's just I think it could be interesting as well. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, um, I don't know much about the other documentaries to say if there's a spoiler here, but I think 20 Days of America was probably the obvious pick here. But moving on to something that doesn't really have an obvious pick because it's international feature, and we've got All of Us Strangers, Anatomy of a Fool, Poor Things, Totem, and The Zone of Interest. I mean, I've heard apart from the ones we've already talked about in the screenplay, but like Poor Things is the other kind of outlier here, which could be a big Oscar contender as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And So it's definitely a 4-horse race, in my opinion. But I think if All of Us Strangers or Anatomy of a Fall win Austria, I think it could open up the door for maybe Poor Things winning international feature here, because I don't think it would be eligible at the Oscars for international feature. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about international feature?
Yeah, it's interesting because they're going with if it's made out of the US, it's international, whereas the Oscars, it has to have a percentage of the language non English. So, of these five, the only ones that would actually qualify at the Oscars, because France did not submit Anatomy of a Fall, would be Totem and Zone of Interest, which is Totem is Mexico's submission, and then Zone of Interest is the UK submission. Now, the UK is interesting because they speak English, obviously, in Britain, but because it's in an international foreign language, it counts for the UK submission. And I think that's what might help the Zone of Interest here. And that's why I would probably pick that as my favorite, only because I think Poor Things and All of Us Strangers, because they are still all in English, I think people might be a little hesitant to vote for it as the best international feature, even though obviously their rules are a little different. And because we didn't really see Poor Things show up anywhere else, I don't know if this voting body is as embracing of it, because it is also more of a high profile movie, not necessarily on the heights of Barbie, but like in a similar way where it's like Fox Searchlight. So there's a little bit of that kind of gray area of it's indie, but it's also kind of still got a big studio backing. And then, yeah, I agree. If Anatomy of a Fall, let's say, wins screenplay, or All of Us Strangers win screenplay, I think they'll spread the wealth here. So that's why I'm going Zone of Interest in terms of predictions here. Also because I think that movie is such like a critic's darling, and the Gothams seem to like really pair up with critics well. And I think there has been some divisiveness, but I think it's more so about the actual like conversations in the film rather than like the film itself, if that makes sense. Like it deals with controversial topics more than it is divisive in terms of enjoyment, I should say. Maybe I'm wrong, but so I think Zone of Interest is probably the favorite here, even though it's only the only one I've seen. So I'm going off of that. I'm very excited to see Poor Things, and I still think it's the front runner right now. If it's not Oppenheimer, it's probably Poor Things. It's probably going to come down to those two right now, at least for me. That's kind of where the Oscars are looking. But again, I don't think they're necessarily going to go for what the Oscar is going to be. I think they might go for the one that kind of just embraces the international feature more, and that would probably be Zone of Interest. But anything can happen. And again, Totem is the one that I think people have not heard of necessarily. I don't really know much about it aside from it being Mexico's submission at the Oscars. But like anything can happen. It's the Gotham, so who knows? This is definitely the most
stacked. And considering they allow English language features in international features, there's very obvious snub, and I'll go to cause a big uproar about it.
Yes.
But Chad, what are your thoughts about best international feature?
Well, when I first saw the list, I just went like, "Oh, Poor Things is probably going to win that." And then Dylan made his case, and then I was like, "Oh, he's making some great points here." Because but now that I'm looking around at a lot of these nominations, Emma Stone didn't get nominated for a performance in there or anything like that. And you look at, screenplay. I don't know if it's a big screenplay movie known for that, but if you look around, like didn't get nominations for well, I guess it wouldn't be a breakthrough director, but for supporting or lead performances or anything like that, or screenplay. So I think Poor Things might not, or maybe they'll give it the win there because it wasn't nominated anything else. But it looks like the two, I guess, the three favorites could be All of the Strangers, Anatomy of a Fall, and The Zone of Interest, because they were nominated other places. I don't know, just from like what I've heard, if I had to pick something that wasn't Poor Things that I think would maybe win, would be Anatomy of a Fall. But again, that's just the one I've heard the most things about other than Poor Things. But yeah, Poor Things could end up just winning anyways, and it could go on to win Best Picture. You just really never know. I think it is up there with like the top like four big competitors for that.
So very quickly on the note about Emma Stone, I'm wondering if it's a thing about if it's in Best International Feature, if the Best International Features can't be nominated in other places, because I thought I'd look back at other previous nominations, and last year Banshees of Inisherin was nominated in Best International Feature, but it also did not get an acting nomination. So,
but All of Us Strangers and Zone of Interest did get some nominations for acting.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I don't know. I just find it very interesting because Banshees of Inisherin is something that was really well guarded in that year, but the fact that didn't get acting nominations surprised me that. But then I just completely forgot about all the other ones in that category. To be fair, but Louis, what are your thoughts about international feature?
I mean, I think it's just the Gothams being the Gothams, because I also remember there was some controversy, I think, because I want to say that Brendan Fraser didn't get nominated at last year's Gothams.
Correct.
And I remember everybody was freaking out that was good, that, oh, this is a red flag, and obviously he went on to win the Oscar. But so I wouldn't say that's necessarily a red flag that Emma didn't get in. I think it's just a situation like Banshees, where it's like they really like the movie, but because it's still sort of a studio movie in a way, because it's it's Searchlight, that maybe they don't want to necessarily like give it too much love when they can go ahead and give love to a lot of these more super indie projects. I think this is just like the screenplay race, where I think it's much more competitive than feature, because I can see them going with All of Us Strangers, especially since I believe it's the most nominated film. And now I can see them going with Anatomy of Fall. I can see them going with Zone of Interest. I think Poor Things is a bit of a long shot here, even though I wouldn't be completely shocked if they actually went ahead with it here, just to give it something. I'm going back. If they're going to go ahead and give Anatomy of a Fall, if I believe they're going to give Anatomy of a Fall screenplay, I think it comes between All of Us Strangers, Zone of Interest, and I think I want to lean towards Zone of Interest at the moment, just because that is a indie project that the indie community is really getting behind, and it is going to be a very likely a contender for international feature, might even get into picture if things go right for it in a certain way. So I'm going to go with Zone of Interest, but I think that, just like screenplay, I think this is a real toss-up here. If anything, tell you what, considering that feature seems so likely to just go to Past Lives, I wouldn't blame them if they decide to end the night with this instead of Best Feature, because it's more competitive.
Yeah.
And Brendan Fraser actually was nominated for lead performance.
Yeah, it was the Spirit Awards that snubbed him, and that's where everyone was like, "Oh, he's not getting a nomination."
Oh, okay.
And I was like, "Okay, yeah." One award ceremony snubbing you does not mean anything, but
yeah, and Colin Farrell's not ended up being nominated for After Yang instead, so maybe that was just a case of his performances split the votes or something. So, moving on to breakthrough director, and as I said earlier, like this is for people's directorial debuts, not so much about like best director of the year, which I find it's interesting. They do breakthrough director, but they don't do like best director. But if it's what they want to do, then I mean I'm all good for them. But because it means that someone who you're guaranteed to get a different winner every year, like as opposed to the
Right.
same people winning a lot of the time. But the nominations we have is, and I'm going to butcher the name, Michelle Garza Cervera for Husara the Bone Woman, Raven Jackson for All Dirt Roads Taste of Salt, Georgina Oakley for Blue Jean, A.V. Rockwell for 1001, and Celine Song for Past Lives. But Lewis, what are your thoughts about Breakthrough Director?
Well, Blue Jean is the only movie here that I'm not particularly like well aware of. The others I have at least heard something about. Um, I think this is Celine Song's to lose, but I can see a world where Rockwell for 1001 wins here if they decide just to go ahead and that they like that movie so much and they want to highlight it, considering what a big that Next to Past Lives is probably one of the higher up their respective movies this year among the indie community. But I gotta think that this is Celine Song's to lose because they Past Lives is the big, big critical and indie and cinephile darling of this year. So I find it very hard that she might lose this. So I think it's hers to lose.
Chad, what are your thoughts about Breakthrough Director?
I mean, I pretty much 100% agree with him. I mean, yeah, I think it's probably going to go to the Past Lives director just because of all the other hype and awards nominations that it's likely to get. But I will say, like, I have seen 1001, and I really liked what A.V. Rockwell did with that movie, and I think she was like one of the big stories out of Sundance. So I think, yeah, if anything could give Celine Song a run for her money, it would be A.V. Rockwell. So I'd like to, yeah, I'm interested to see how that race, goes. But yeah, especially because if Past Lives could win somewhere else, I hope maybe they'll just give this one to A.V. Rockwell instead.
Dylan, what are your thoughts about Breakthrough Director?
Yeah, it's interesting because like we've been talking about spreading the wealth for a lot of other films, but like this is one where you look at the category and it does seem like there's a clear favorite with Celine Song. First off, 5 women nominated, which is really cool. But also I love the variety of genre too. I mean, Huesera the Bone Woman, you have a supernatural horror body thriller horror movie there, so which is pretty cool. And then you have something Past Lives, which is so like kind of classic romance. But yeah, I still think it'll go to Celine Song. I know there's a lot of spreading the wealth, but I just feel like that movie is hotter than the rest, especially when you look at distribution too. Like A24 has been doing a really good job putting Past Lives out there, whereas I think Focus Features has really fumbled the ball with 1001 to where so many people didn't even realize when it hit streaming and all that thing and all that stuff. So I hope 1001 gets some recognition here, but I do think it's going to be Past Lives.
But yeah, like once again, I'm familiar with most of these. I've heard of Blue Jean somewhere. I think someone mentioned it. From
I think Sean had it in his top 10 when we did our top 10.
Yeah. I'm I'm fairly certain someone's talking about it. But yeah, but I think this is a case where the people who like the voting body might think like, well, Past Lives is probably most definitely going to win pitch, so they might give this to someone else. And it probably maybe it will be A.V. Rockwell. And yeah, it's just one of those ones like, I'm definitely curious about 1001. I'm even curious about Blue Jean from what I've heard about it too. But yeah, it's just one of those ones that I think it's either going to be Celine Song or A.V. Rockwell personally. But moving on to outstanding lead performance, and like for the last few years they've combined both actor and actress into one just to allow like there to be no controversy about like trans actors and all that, which I'm fine with. But it's just one of those ones like I do kind of wish there's a way to get at least 2 winners in this or something. but it is what it is. I know there's talks. I know people wanting Oscars to do this as well, but it's but yeah, but the nominations for outstanding lead performance we've got Anjunu Alice Taylor. I definitely butchered that name for the movie Origin. Lily Gladstone for The Unknown Country. Greta Lee for Past Lives. France Rogowski for Passages. But Batilda Joe for Our Father the Devil. Andrew Scott for All of Us Strangers. Kaylee Spaney for Priscilla. Tayana Taylor for 1001, Michelle Williams for Showing Up, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. And yeah, it's one of those ones like it's kind of interesting seeing Lily Gladstone nominated for something that's not Killers of the Flower Moon. But I think whether or not it's just a case of the voting body just thought that Killers is too like high profile and like they wanted to highlight a different performance from her. But it is what it is. But this is definitely interesting. But bunch here. But I think this could go one of few ways. Like from what I've heard about Priscilla, I think Katie Spaney's got a good chance here. Jeffrey, I've heard a lot of good stuff about Jeffrey Wright, and I've heard a lot of good stuff about Greta Lee for Past Lives. So I think it's going to be one of it. If I had to put money on one of them, I'd probably have to say Jeffrey Wright. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about outstanding lead performance?
Yeah, first off, just of these ones that I've seen, I think Greta Lee is great in Past Lives. I think Kaylee Spaney is absolutely incredible in Priscilla. I think Tiana Taylor is so good in 1001. And the other one I've seen, Franz Rogowski in Passages, is such an interesting performance because he's such a despicable human being, but he's got so much empathy. So of those four that I've seen, I would probably give my vote to Kaylee Spaney. But looking at this lineup, it's very interesting because like looking at it from the Gotham's perspective of what's been nominated at the Gothams, I'd say it's probably a 3-horse race between Tiana Taylor, Andrew Scott, and Greta Lee, just based on the movies that have gotten the most nominations, because All of Us Strangers, Past Lives, and 1001 have gotten multiple nominations. But when you look at like the grand scheme of award season, I think I'm with you, Malcolm, in the fact that Jeffrey Wright right now has the best chance of an Oscar nomination of all these 10 or however many nominees. So it's interesting. Like my brain is thinking maybe Jeffrey Wright because he's the most likely to get an Oscar nomination, but then American Fiction is yet to be seen anywhere else in this lineup in these other categories. So it's really just a question of, are they going to go for one of the performances in one of the movies that's nominated a lot, or are they going to go for the one that's more of like the Oscar movie? But then I looked at the other past years since they've expanded the category. 2 years ago, it was 2 actors, one from a movie that wasn't even on the awards radar, and then Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter, who I believe went on to get an Oscar nomination.
Yeah.
And then last year, though, it went to Daniel Deadwyler, who should have won an Oscar. But the two big performances there that did not win were Cate Blanchett and Tar and Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it doesn't necessarily correlate to the Oscars. I think it's more of a Gotham's thing. So that's why I'm kind of going to put probably my eggs in the basket of maybe Tiana Taylor or Andrew Scott if I had to, just because I think if we're going to go screenplay for Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest in International, this could be where All of Us Strangers picks up a win, because Andrew Scott, I think right now is like 6 or 7 for actor in the Oscars. Like I think he's really close to getting in. It's just that category is so stacked. It's like, who's going to drop out of that? So I really think this could be his award to lose, because I think when looking at it from the Gotham's perspective, All of Us Strangers is a more popular movie than like Priscilla or American Fiction. So that's kind of where my brain's at right now. But I think this is a really good slate. I'm a little bit surprised that Sandra Hüller didn't get in here from Anatomy of a Fall, even though she is nominated for supporting for something else. So maybe that's why. And also cool that Lily Gladstone got nominated in a movie that wasn't Killers of the Flower Moon, to show people like, hey, she also does other things and she's great in other things. So very interesting category. I'm really interested to see how this one turns out, and I couldn't really predict it right now.
Yeah, I mean, and actually the other thing I just would about while you're talking is like May December got a few loves. I'm surprised we didn't get like Natalie Portman or in here.
I have more to say on that later.
But Chad, what are your thoughts about lead performance?
It's interesting because like when I was looking through here, I had similar thoughts to actually both you guys. And then I felt validated when people were saying that they could easily see Jeffrey Wright taking this, because when I look through this, I saw a lot of names that could come up to win this award, but Jeffrey Wright was the one that stood out just because like I think he's playing like the musician or writer.
The writer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's playing like a known person. And I've heard a lot of like buzz just about that movie, but also that performance from it. And just Jeffrey Wright has been kind of like, surprising, showing up and surprising, like, for a long time now. And I just think, he might get it. Although when Dylan said that, he thought maybe Tiana Taylor could get it, that one really excited me, that potential prediction, because that's the only performance I've seen from the list, I believe, looking over this. Yes. And that is a great performance. I just don't know how much it's talked about. So, I don't know if that one would be a favorite, but if she could pull that out, I think that would be amazing. But yeah, I'll predict Jeffrey Wright, although I could also see Greta Lee getting it as well. So yeah.
Louise, what are your thoughts about outstanding lead performance?
Well, I think this might end up being the most competitive of all, because I'm looking at these names and I honestly can see a world where like half of these win. Like I can even see a world where Anjanou Ellis Taylor even pulls off a win because the Gothams decide to be the Gothams. I can see a world where Greta Lee wins. I can even see a world where they decide to give it to Lily Gladstone just to try to push her Killers of the Flower Moon campaign, because I believe Killers of the Flower Moon did not submit, and that's why that's one of the reasons that they didn't pick her performance in that. I think Tiana Taylor could win too, because I could see the Gothams deciding this is our chance to boost her for her long shot odds of getting an Oscar nomination. I could see them going with Jeffrey Wright to try to boost him, even though I think he's a little bit less of a long shot than Tiana would. So I can see them going with Tiana instead. And Kaylee Spaney, I can absolutely see a world where she wins. Andrew Scott, I can see them pushing him, especially if they do decide to spread the wealth around and say they go with Zone for international, Anatomy for screenplay. This is where they can award All of Us Strangers by giving it to Andrew Scott. I'm not even going to attempt to do a prediction either, because this is just so close and every day. I'm probably going to change my mind all the way up to the end when I go and do my thing on Gold Derby. But I mean, gun to head right now, I might actually just go ahead and do a gamble on Tiana to pull this off, just because this would be a chance for them to really push her, to try to give her some buzz going into awards season.
And moving on to outstanding supporting performance. And fun fact, there's only one movie that appears in both supporting and lead performances, and that's All of Us Strangers. That's the only movie that is in both of the acting categories, which I think is interesting. They really spread the love here, because in supporting performances, you've got Juliette Binoche for The Taste of Things, Penelope Cruz for Ferrari, Jamie Foxx for They Cloned Tyrone, Claire Foy for All of Us Strangers, Ryan Gosling for Barbie, which kind of surprised me, but that he's the only one that Glenn Harrington from Blackberry, Sandra Hewler for The Zone of Interest, Rachel McAdams for Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, Charles Melton for May December, and Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Lewis, what are your thoughts about supporting performance?
I mean, I think this one's pretty competitive, but I do think it's a little bit of a shorter list of who I can see winning. I'm not going to bet that they do it, but I would not be shocked if they actually decide just to go with Gosling, just to try to almost do a cool thing. But I also can see that the voting body would probably be like, well, we got to stay in the spirit of Gotham. We got to stay in the spirit of recognizing these smaller movies. So maybe the nomination is just a win for him, and it might be a good sign for him that they did go out of their way to make sure, given the cap is now gone, to give him some love, even though Oppenheimer and these other contenders did not submit. I I think Glenn Howerton from Blackberry, because has been a bit of a push for him among a lot of indie movie fans. I think Glenn Howerton from Blackberry could potentially be a winner. I could see them pushing Divine Joy Randolph from Holdovers. Charles Melton, I would say, is probably the other person that I could see winning, because I've heard a lot of good things about him in May, December. I haven't just seen the movie yet, but I think he's got a real shot to potentially sneak into supporting actor at the Oscars. If I had to predict, I'd probably go ahead and maybe I predict Melton just for the Gothams to try to see if they could really push him. But I would say that right now I can see Gosling, Howerton, Melton, or Randolph winning. And maybe they might try to push Claire Foy, but I think that's kind of a long shot. But yeah, I think this is as competitive as, not as competitive, because like I said, I think practically half the field in lead, if not a little more, I could see winning. But this is, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they try to push here. Yeah, I mean, if right now, I'd probably predict Milton.
Chad, what are your thoughts about supporting?
Yeah, I think this is actually a more kind of exciting field, just because I've seen a few of these at least. I am kind of surprised that if they're gonna throw Gosling in there, which I loved his performance, but I kind of agree with Lewis about the not in the spirit of the Gotham Awards. But like why they didn't also get Margot Robbie in there for lead. But also I have similar thoughts about Jamie Foxx, who was hilarious and They Clone Tyrone. He's so good in it. But like John Boyega was like a next step above him. Like that dude should win an Oscar. So that dude is incredible. I love John Boyega. And then I adored Rachel McAdams and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. She was so great in that. And I can't wait to see Divine Joy Randolph and The Holdovers. I think that's probably going to be a movie I really, really, really like. I can't wait to see that one. But I'm actually kind of going to agree a little bit. I don't know if he would win, but I would really want to see Glenn Howerton win for Blackberry, just because that was kind of a transformative role. Whereas like you see him as kind of a piece of shit in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia a lot of the times, kind of like a serial killer type, crazy guy. But like in this one, he's just like so different from even that. Like he's still an asshole, but he's like so different and just so wild and scary even. And I loved him in that movie. I thought that movie was just really great just in general. So yeah, if I had to pick someone to win, I would probably pick Glenn Howerton. Although there's a lot of really good performances in this slate.
Dylan, what are your thoughts about supporting performance?
Yeah, I love this lineup of just performances. I haven't seen They Clone Tyrone, and I haven't seen All of Us Strangers or Blackberry yet, but everything else I have seen, and I'm very excited. I think it's great to see the Gotham's Award performances that might not be an Oscars consideration, like Juliette Binoche for The Taste of Things. Probably not going to get nominated for anything else across this award season, but that movie is a top 5 movie of the year for me, and she is earth-shatteringly good in that movie. Same as Ferrari, like Penelope Cruz is really good in that movie, even though everyone else in the cast for some reason can't do an Italian accent. She can, and it really stands out. And then looking at some of these other performances, I know Barbie, the reason I rolled my eyes at the nomination is not because he's not good. He's amazing in it, but it's like, it just feels out of the spirits of the Gothams because you've got this big budget Warner Brothers highest grossing film of the year amongst all these other smaller indie darlings. And like to an extent, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is also a studio film, not an indie film, but like that one's a little bit more accessible because it's a smaller film by nature, and I love that film, so I'd love to see Rachel McAdams get some recognition. Sandra Hüller for The Zone of Interest is very interesting because I actually think of her more as a lead in that movie than supporting. So if you're going to nominate her as a lead in something, I would have liked to see her in Anatomy of a Fall, even though I haven't seen that yet, just given what I've heard of her. The two exciting nominations, though, I want to talk about are Charles Melton and Divine Joy Randolph. So Charles Melton, the reason earlier I said I had something to say about the Natalie Portman comment is because I know a lot of people are going to see this and be surprised that Natalie Portman didn't get a nomination for May December, but there's only one movie, as Malcolm said, that's in both categories, and that's All of Us Strangers. So I really feel like they weren't doing a lot of double nominations. I think that's why we didn't see Margot get nominated or something. I think it's because they weren't trying to give a lead and supporting. I think they were kind of just trying to pick one performance to kind of represent all the films, which is a good case for All of Us Strangers in like picture and screenplay because it means they love that movie. But I think Charles Melton in that movie is so good, and I think a lot of people, when they see who's in it and they're like, oh, it's Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman, and then there's Charles Melton, I think a lot of people don't expect going into it that Charles Melton will be the standout. And I think for most people, like 9 out of 10 people have been loving Charles Melton as like the standout of that movie. And I still would nominate Natalie Portman, but I think Charles Melton is even more deserving because he is by far the standout to me in that movie. And then Divine Joy Randolph, it's very interesting because I think Holdovers is a movie we also don't see across any other categories. But I think that's also because it's a little bit more high profile, but she is so good in that movie. And when I was looking at who to predict, when I looked back at the last two post-pandemic, when they combined male, female, and non-binary actors, the last two winners were Ke Huy Quan and Troy Kotsur. And this award ceremony happens at the end of November. It's the first one of the year. And that was really when Troy Kotsur and Ke Huy Quan's narrative started. So the Gothams, especially in this category of supporting, is kind of where America kind of finds out who is going to be the front runner for supporting. And I think because there's not, we don't have Robert Downey Jr. here, who I think is a clear front runner for Oppenheimer. I think you look at supporting actress, and I think Divine Joy Randolph, this is going to be where she wins her first award, and that's going to cement her as the front runner in supporting, and she's going to take it to the Oscar. Because Troy Kotsur did it, Ke Huy Quan did it, and I think of all these actors in this lineup, I think she has the best chance of actually winning an Oscar of all these. Maybe Ryan Gosling too, but I just don't think he's going to win for the reasons we've said because it's a big budget movie. I think Divine Joy Randolph, this is going to be kind of the start of her kind of steamroll to the Oscars because there's really, ever since Lily Gladstone moved to lead, there really hasn't been a clear front runner. And I think people are wondering, is it a Color Purple girl? Is it Divine Joy Randolph? Is it Viola Davis for Air? Is it Emily Blunt for Oppenheimer? And I think this award, if Divine Joy Randolph wins this one, is going to be the first of her many awards to come. And it's going to kind of be one of those inevitable, like Troy Kotsur or Ke Huy Quan things where she just wins every award because she is the front runner of that category in every award show. So that's my prediction. I think Divine Joy Randolph's going to win this and then continue holding over to multiple ceremonies.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones like, and yeah, like I do agree with you, but it's like like on Barbie, there's I like as much I do think Ron Gosling is great as Ken. I don't think he's Vince here, but purely because I think the voting bodies are probably going to be like, well, I mean, Barbie's going to get a lot of love anyway, most likely. So they may not vote for him because they think he doesn't need the boost. But they may think like maybe a Charles Melton or Divine Joy Randolph does. So I think like one of the other people in here was probably going to win here. As for who it is, I'm not too sure. Like, because I mean, that's very like I think if the Zone of Interest is going to be a big player, which it really could be, I think there's a good chance maybe Sandra Hüller wins, and that kind of means that we're bound to get a few more foreign faces in the acting races at the Oscars. So it's like there's a lot of like no matter which way you go, there's really an interesting thing. Yeah, but it's just one of those ones. Like I looked at the name Charles Mel, I didn't recognize it, but then I saw he was in Riverdale. I was like, oh yeah, I know who he is now.
He's much better in May December than he is in Riverdale.
I don't know. I really like Riverdale. But,
no, he's good in Riverdale. But he's even that's just more of a compliment of his performance in May December, which is I think next level. So.
But moving on, I'm not going to go into a big discussion about this, but the Gotham's Awards are also giving out some special awards as well. For cultural icon and creator tribute is going to Maestro. Then they're doing a icon and creator tribute for innovation that's going to Ferrari. Icon and creator tribute for social justice to Rustin, and then visionary icon and creator tribute to Ear. Which I'm a little bit surprised. I don't know. I'm even though I'm pretty sure Ear counts as a studio movie, but I don't know what its budget was. I'm surprised it didn't really sneak into the acting things. I don't know if they just considered it too big of that. I don't know. But that we're going to switch on, move away from the film awards for the city of Gotham, and move into the Hollywood Music and Media Awards. And I mean, with this, I'm probably going to, just to save time, probably going to merge this into like the discussion what we think out of each category could end up in the Oscar race for things like that. But at the top, the first category we're going to go to is song from a feature film, and nominated we've got I'm Just Ken from Barbie. We've got What Was I Made For, also from Barbie. The Fire Inside from Flaming Hot. High Life from Flora and Son. I Am from Origin, which is written by a New Zealander. I'm just going to throw that out there. Um, Road to Freedom from Rustin. This from the Beanie Bubble. And Keep It Moving from the Color Purple. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about the nominations for best song from a feature film?
Yeah, I think again, it's hard because some of these movies I haven't seen, but I think if you look at these names and writers, I mean, Diane Warren's there, obviously, for Flamin' Hot. And I think this is kind of our answer of, okay, so that's going to be the Diane Warren song that
Yeah.
gets nominated. I know Dan has been saying 80 for Brady, 80 for Brady, but I think the fact that this award ceremony nominated the Flamin' Hot song, I think it's a very good chance that Flamin' Hot will be an Oscar nominee and for that song for Diane Warren, but she will still lose, obviously, because she's never winning. She's the Charlie Brown of the Oscars with the football. I think it's cool that both Barbie songs got nominated because I think they're so different that they almost could kind of exist in different movies, but they are in the same movie, which is kind of cool. One is diegetic, one's non-diegetic. That also kind of plays well. One is used as background music, whereas one is like the character actually singing it. So I think that's why I think Barbie. I don't know if we're talking about actual Oscars yet, but like I think those two films could translate to the Oscars as a double nominee. We saw it with La La Land. We've seen it with a lot of the Disney Renaissance films. It's okay for multiple songs from a movie to get nominated. This is actually one of the only categories where we see a lot of double nominees aside from like some acting. So I think this is definitely a good shot that we see both those Barbie songs get Oscar nominations. As for the others, Flora and Son, I mean, obviously a John Carney film, the songs are going to get recognized, but probably miss out at the Oscars unless you're once. And then I Am from Origin and Road to Freedom from Rustin. I could see one of those two kind of translating to the Oscars because they kind of fit that kind of empowering, like the song from Harriet, Stand Up, the song from Selma, Glory, like it kind of fits that kind of slot in the Oscars race as the one from Judas and the Black Messiah that won. I think one of those two films, I would probably say Rustin, only because Lenny Kravitz is more of a name, is kind of going to be the one that we might see go to the Oscars. But the other two songs, I think, are happy to be there. Even though Color Purple, it's a musical, so there's a chance it could get an Oscar nomination. But I really think, I think it's safe to say the Barbie songs, the Diane Warren song, and the Rustin song are all pretty safe bets for at least contending for an Oscar, maybe not getting the nomination, but definitely going to be in that like 10 or so that competes for it. And then like one slot I'll save for later because I think maybe there's a chance an animated film gets in there as well. But of this category, what I would like to win, of what I've heard, again, I haven't heard a lot of these. I've only really heard the two Barbie songs. And of the two, I'm actually more of the Billie Eilish fan than I am I'm Just Ken. I think I'm Just Ken is a better movie moment, but I think in terms of just an actual song, I think What Was I Made For has such great writing and context and like just so much devastation in those lyrics that I think is beautiful. Even though Billie Eilish just won a bunch of awards a few years ago, I don't care. Give her more.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on your note about like multiple songs there. There is the rule that no film can have more than two songs nominated as
Gotcha.
well. So sometimes studios do only put through one song just So
be
it's going to be interesting to see if they do put both these songs up. So, but Chad, what are your thoughts about?
Well, no, go ahead. I was just going to make the point that I believe they're actually going ahead and submitting the 3 songs for consideration.
Yeah, I think they can submit more than 2, but only 2 can get chosen to nominate.
Yeah,
maybe? I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, so up to 5 songs from a single film can be submitted. So yeah,
Gotcha. But only 2 can make the short list, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but Chad, what are your thoughts about the feature film songs?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Dylan a little bit, not 100%. I actually don't know if Road to Freedom is going to be like a shoe-in, like he says, but I could easily see it being kind of like that type of of song that ends up in there. If I had to predict just from these 5, not 10, or these 5, this slate, the 5 that are going to make it, if songs from like Wish or something like that don't actually get in, which they probably will, I would throw in both of those 2 Barbie songs. And I agree with Dylan. I do think What Was I Made For is maybe the better song overall, but I'm Just Ken is extremely fun. I mean, Diane Warren is definitely going to get in here. I don't think there's any question about that. She pretty much always does. Even though she has the curse of the I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, where that should have won, it didn't, and then now he's doomed to just never
win again.
But I think Keep It Moving could end up being in there. I don't. That song hasn't been released yet, right? Because I couldn't find it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I really
Color
want
Purple is such a question mark in every category, because it's like we really don't know how it's going to perform. Yeah. But it is Halle Bailey.
We still don't really know if it's coming out this year, whether it's going to get a last minute push as well.
Yeah. Well,
suppose they're doing. Well, sorry to cut you off there, but I just want to point out that supposedly they're doing screenings to like DGA and such around Thanksgiving week. So they seem to be still intent on releasing this thing.
Yeah, I think it'll still get there, just because also now we're seeing these songs get nominated. I think it's a good chance if they were to push it. I don't know what they would do with these songs in this award ceremony. I don't know if they could push those or I don't know.
Yeah, I also just wanted to throw out my support for High Life from Flora and Son, because I love John Carney movies. This isn't one of my favorites. Like, I don't think it's as good as Once or Sing Street. But I'm hoping, I think Dylan's probably going to be right, and it's probably not going to get nominated, but I really, really love this song. I think it gets better and better the more that you listen to it. It's a really, really good one, and it really works in the movie at the third act kind of song. And I'm hoping that because Once had one that won, Falling Slowly, and then Sing Street was completely snubbed, I'm hoping that they go, you know what, since we snubbed Sing Street, let's actually put in High Life, because I do think it's a worthy song. Check it out and check that movie out, because they're both pretty great, but I think that song is kind of the best part of that movie. So yeah.
Louis, what are your thoughts about songs and feature film?
Well, to follow that up, I don't think High Life is going to get in, which is unfortunate, because I do like that song. I didn't love Florence, but I really did like it. I thought it was a solid B+ film. So it'd be nice to see it at least make the short list and get a shot. Yeah, it's interesting to me that supposedly Barbie is submitting 3 songs. I think the third song is performed by Olivia Rodrigo. That's the one that did not get in. So I think I'm Just Ken. What Was I Made For are probably the 2 that they're going to go for. That third song's probably going to be a long shot to be the second one that they pick. I do find it very interesting that Diane Warren got in for the Flaming Hot song and not 80 for Brady. I thought 80 for Brady was going to be her ticket, because that's performed by some mega stars, and that could have been an interesting narrative, an interesting performance that maybe could have given her a shot to finally win one of these things. So it's very interesting that they did not go for 80 for Brady. They went with the Flaming Hot song, which I got to tell you, until these nominations came out, I saw Flaming Hot. I did not know that she wrote any song for Flaming Hot. So Road to Freedom to me feels like that song that gets into the short list but misses out. Unless Coleman Domingo does get in the actor race, maybe that leads to this song coming along for the ride. And keep it moving from Color Purple. Yeah, Color Purple is such a huge like question mark. I'm still gambling that it might end up being something big, but the longer this goes and the more questionable this campaign strategy of theirs is, I don't know. So if the movie does end up being a big contender, I can see it coming along for the ride. But I can also see it being one of those that gets into the short list but comes up short and doesn't get into the 5, especially given the competition for song this year. But yeah, I agree. I think this shows us the fact that 2 Barbie songs got in there. I think it does show us that those 2 Barbie songs are very legitimate contenders to both get in there. And maybe we'll get like a medley or something like that at the Oscars.
That would be incredible. And if you're gonna nominate a third one from Barbie, I would say either Pink by Lizzo or Dance the Night by Dua Lipa.
Yeah, I think Dance the Night is maybe one of the other ones they're thinking of submitting because that one I think plays more on the radio than these other two.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, I think that other one you're thinking of is probably Dance Another Way, which is that Dua Lipa, because Olivia Rodrigo doesn't have a song in the movie.
Right.
Oh, okay. Then maybe that is the one.
She has one for another big blockbuster film coming up. So
yeah. But I do remember that they submitted a third one, but that's not the one that got in here because.
Yeah. No, the third one's probably most likely Dance Another Way, because that was one that was in all the market. Yeah. But I would argue that that Pink from Lizzo probably should have been the other ones. I like that more than but that being said, like it is what it is. But yeah, this is one that's tough because and talking about Sing Street, the last year that Diane Wyman didn't get in didn't get a nomination is 2016, which is the year of Sing Street and La La Land. But so yeah, and this is one of those cases. I think if a movie gets a double nomination, then it's going to knock Diane Warren out. Because I actually quite like Flaming Hot. I do not remember that song at all.
Probably in the credits or something.
Well, I mean, even then, I always watch the credits.
Right.
I just don't remember that song at all. But yeah, I mean, if I was to pick songs out of this one that could thing, like I think at least one of the Barbie songs are going to get in, and it's one of those ones like this is going to be interesting because I think because we know the Oscars like to try and get some big name people to sing at the Oscars, and if they get do What Was I Made For, then that's going to get Billie Eilish there. But that being said, just looking at who is involved with I'm Just Ken, you've got Ryan Gosling singing, and then you could get Slash and Wolfgang Van Halen performing on that stage as well. So
I will say though, Malcolm, I think regardless of if it gets nominated or not, I still think I'm Just Ken is happening at the Oscars regardless. Like I could see a world where they don't nominate that, but they nominate What Was I Made For, but we still get I'm Just Ken as like the opening number of the Oscars. I still think there's a good chance.
I mean, as long as they don't butcher it like we don't talk about Bruno.
Right. Exactly. That got performed at the Oscars, so you never know.
And it was butchered.
And it was awful, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones like I'm actually going to look up this movie Origin and listen to that song because I don't think it's going to get into the Oscars, but it's a song that I did not know about that was then like a New Zealand singers.
It's the new Ava DuVernay, and she won Best Song for Selma, so I mean that could help.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting. But yeah, this is one of those years there's a lot of songs and there's still some categories. I don't know if they because it's one of those ones like there's a lot of other categories here and there's a lot of other songs Yeah. So moving on to the next one. We've got song from science fiction and fantasy movie. We've got A World of Your Own from Wonka. Can't Catch Me Now, performed by Olivia Rodrigo. um, for the first time for The Little Mermaid. Wild Uncharted Waters from The Little Mermaid. And You'll Never Had Chocolate Like This from Wonka. So this is this is either going to be Wonka or Little Mermaid to win, or Olivia Rodrigo just comes through the, out of nowhere. But this is interesting because um once again and now I think that I can't I think the official no so one that Disney is putting doing in its campaign for Little Mermaid is for the first time, or I think they've actually, or either that or they're not. I think they're either not campaigning for song at all, or it's for the first time.
I think they're
I
submitting
know,
for the first time because it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. Actually, they're both Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I think they're going with just the one for campaigning.
yeah. I knew there was some kind of controversy there, but I can't remember. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting category because, just because you've got you've literally got three movies in contention here, and so I think maybe Wonka and Little Mermaid cancel each other out, and it's actually going to be the Hunger Games song. But um, but yeah, Louise, what are your thoughts about sci-fi fantasy song?
I mean, what I see for me is the fact that Wonka got two songs in. So well, Wonka also showed up in another category. So I guess I don't know if they've got it, the folks behind these nominees got to see a rough cut of the movie, or or they got to listen to the songs, and that's how they base their nominations or what. But it is interesting that two songs from Wonka got in because Warner Brothers, obviously Barbie's their big contender, but they're also pushing Color Purple, and I noticed in the FYC site they're also pushing Wonka. So I think Warner Brothers does have some hope that maybe they can maybe sneak into song, maybe sneak into some text. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think I would predict a Wonka song to get in right now, but of course it's the fact because it's kind of the movie's a little bit of an unknown other than the trailers that we've seen. But it is interesting to me that two songs got in. So maybe maybe it really is a true musical, and it could be interesting to see if that movie actually shows up a little bit more at the Oscars than we're assuming. Obviously, below the line, I think Picture's a major long shot for it. Um, in terms of Little Mermaid, so I went ahead and checked real quick right now at the official Disney FYC, and they're campaigning for the first time Wild Uncharted Waters that got in, and the Scuttlebutt. So those seem to be the three that they're pushing. But I think for the first time is probably the one that they might have the best shot at. Even though at the moment I would probably predict that the Little Mermaid gets a song or two into the short list, but maybe comes up short because again, it's just such a stacked year for song this year. And they probably have a better shot with their animated lineup. But yeah, I would say that's what's popped up to me the most is the fact that we didn't get just one but two Wonka songs in here, which makes me very interested to see if that movie could do a little bit better below the line than we assume come Oscar nomination morning.
Yeah. But Chad, what are your thoughts about sci-fi fantasy song?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Paddington franchise, so I really love Paul King and his direction. So I'm really, really hyped for Wonka. I think Timothy is going to be really great in it. I just think it's going to be a really good movie. I'm hoping Paddington 3 doesn't suffer for it, but I'm really hyped for it. I think it's going to be good. I mean, the original Willy Wonka movie was a bit of a musical as well, so I'm hoping that it kind of flows from that one to this one, and a lot of the songs are really great. So I think a Wonka song could end up winning, even though it is a bit of an unknown. I mean, it's going up against The Little Mermaid, which is Disney. And then also the You Can't Catch Me Now, Olivia Rodrigo. She has a little bit of a Billie Eilish-esque, kind of a way of singing that song, so I could see it being kind of like an Oscar type of song. So maybe that one could end up winning. If I were to predict, I really don't know, but I would love to see a Wonka song, even though I haven't heard them get in, because I'm sure they're going to be incredible. And both of them are performed by Timothy. But I don't know. A World of Your Own sounds like a good one that could win. Just like sound unheard prediction for one of the Wonka songs.
And an interesting fact that actually really surprised me is in the original Willy Wonka, none of those songs were nominated that year for
Yeah.
best original song. Dylan, what are your thoughts about sci-fi fantasy song?
Yeah, this is an interesting category. It's only 3 films. We haven't heard 2 of the songs, as we've said, but I honestly think, and I don't know, Malcolm, do you know when this award ceremony takes place? Is it soon?
I believe it's November.
Okay, so I'm gonna say right now, I think Olivia Rodrigo's got this one. I think the Hunger Games soundtrack, they made a deal with SAG where the actors could start promoting it, because Olivia Rodrigo is not an actor in the movie, obviously, but Rachel Zegler has done a lot of music on the movie. And because they got a SAG deal, Rachel Zegler actually has been promoting a lot of the music. And it seems like the music has been one of the key fundamental parts of the advertising. Now, if we remember correctly, a few years ago when the first Hunger Games came out, who wrote the song for the first Hunger Games and got a lot of buzz for it was Taylor Swift for Safe and Sound. Which is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs for the Hunger Games. So I think we could see another thing like that. I don't think it's an Oscar song. I don't think any of these songs are going to get Oscar nominations, only because it is a very stacked category this year. But I think in this category, especially when you have 2 films that will probably split, you'll get a lot of Little Mermaid backers and a lot of Wonka backers that'll probably cancel each other out. I think because the Hunger Games is making a lot of their marketing now that the actors can campaign for it, centered around the music, and the new album, which I listen to, is amazing. There's a lot of Rachel Zegler on it, a lot of Olivia Rodrigo. I just really love the music for this new Hunger Games movie, and I haven't even seen it, but it's getting me hyped for it. So I think because of that hype, if the awards were to happen today or in the next few weeks, I think Hunger Games is riding that high when it comes to campaigning. Whereas I think Little Mermaid, a lot of people have honestly kind of forgotten about it because it wasn't a big box office success. It's kind of just fizzled out. And I think because Scuttlebutt was so bad, people kind of don't want to award the Little Mermaid at all. And Chad hates Aquafina, or not doesn't hate Aquafina, but he's been annoyed by Aquafina lately, and he hasn't even seen her most annoying film role, which is Scuttle. So I think if Chad, for example, were to watch Little Mermaid, I think he would walk away from it not wanting to award any of the songs because Aquafina is so annoying in it. And I'm not meaning to dunk on Aquafina, but I think a lot of people are going to see that movie and be like, the new songs don't stack up at all against the old ones. I think that's the problem for Little Mermaid, is that when you have a movie that has Under the Sea, Part of Your World, Kiss the Girl in it, I don't think a lot of people are leaving that movie thinking, oh, the Lin-Manuel Miranda songs were great. Aquafina rapping as Scuttle was great. I don't think anyone's going to think that. I think people are going to think about the original songs that they love so much. So that's where I think Little Mermaid falters. And then Wonka, I think just because not a lot of people have seen it yet, if this is happening in a few weeks, I don't know. I think Olivia Rodrigo now is hitting a good high, kind of like Taylor Swift was when the first Hunger Games came out. So that's kind of where I'm predicting, even though I don't think any of these 5 will get in for the Oscar.
And I think the live action remakes have had trouble getting those original songs in there anyway.
Yeah, they try so hard, but it's because they're never as good as the original animated. And when you have all those original songs in there, it's like people are leaving the theater singing Part of Your World. They're not singing For the First Time, which is a good song, but it doesn't hold a candle next to Part of Your World.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those ones like just conversely to that, like none of the Hunger Games songs have been in Best Original Song. I went back all the way through all the original songs. Like none of the Hunger Games got in. Like there was no Lord or Taylor Swift. And, like,
right.
And both those songs were really highly regarded. But that being said, looking at ever since the Hollywood Music and Media Awards started doing like separating this original song into sci-fi fantasy and all that, like both Just Like Fire from Alice Through the Looking Glass and How Does the Moment Last Forever from Beauty and the Beast won that award. So
Wow.
so this could bode well for maybe the live action ones here. But it's just one of those ones like there's so much thing and yeah, and I think into what Lewis said about like the fact we haven't heard the Wonka songs yet. They probably just submitted the songs to this organization so they could listen to the songs. Like I can't imagine them voting for the at blind. It's like, oh yeah, Wonka's that's coming out. But moving on to song from an independent movie. Normally we've got Stardust from the Florence Pugh movie A Good Person. I Got You from Holiday Tryst, Space and Time from Master Gardener, um, Quiet Eyes from Past Lives, Elf Saver from Radical, and Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone from a movie called Sons to the Grave. I've only heard of one of these movies, and so um, and by the looks of it, everyone else has had the same thoughts. I'm just going to say I think Past Lives gets the song here just because it depends on how good these other songs are. But I don't really see any of these songs breaking into original song at all.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
Lewis, what are your thoughts about the songs from independent film?
Yeah, I don't think these are really any contenders, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. But I will say this: Quiet Eyes from Past Lives could be something interesting to keep an eye out for in terms of if it makes the short list at the very least. If it makes the short list for Song of the Oscars, that could be an early good sign that that movie is really hitting with voters. But other than that, I don't think these are really contenders. I think it's just that independent film didn't really, well, stick out with big songs this year. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just give it to the Past Lives song.
Yeah, and none of these singers are really that well known either. Either it's just like Chad, what are your thoughts about the songs from independent film?
I mean, I like super disagree with what he said. I did actually listen through most of these just to see what I thought. And the two that stood out, I believe, were Stardust, and Quiet Eyes. But yeah, just knowing that Past Lives is in the mix here, I could see that easily winning. But yeah, none of them other than those two really stood out to me.
Dylan, any thoughts on songs from independent?
Not really. I mean, I agree. I think Quiet Eyes is the front runner. It could be kind of the song from Parasite or the song from Minari that is like the one that gets on the short list, and people are like, "Oh, it's going to get in because it's from those films," and then it doesn't get the Oscar nomination. I think that's exactly kind of what it's going to be, So
Moving on to song from the documentary, we've got Everything Is Gonna Be Alright from the documentary Bobby Wine, The People's President, which is performed by Bobby Wine. 40-Foot Man from the documentary Bono and the Edge, a sort of homecoming with Dave Letterman, which, would you believe it, is performed by Bono and the Edge. We've got Speechless from the movie Louder Than Rock, Dream Your Little Dream from the Jewel Thief, and Todo Fu Por Amor from With This Light. Once, just like we did with Independent, I don't really see any of these making a splash. I think the only one that maybe could, just because of who's behind it, and that is probably Bono and the Edge, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you two got in for one of the Mandela movies.
I think so. Or they got
Really,
shortlisted and close. Yeah.
yeah. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about song from documentary?
There aren't any thoughts. I mean, I haven't heard these songs, so I don't know. But it's obvious that Bono is going to be the name that most people are going like, "Oh, that's going to win." But again, I'd like to believe that these voters actually listen to these songs and vote for the one they think is best, rather than who's the most popular. But if we're going to go based on just initial predictions, it's got to be that because of the popularity of Bono. But yeah, I don't think any of these are going to crack in. But imagine if a Bono documentary had a song written by someone not U2. That'd be pretty amazing.
But Chad, what are your thoughts about song from the documentary?
I mean, I actually agree. I didn't listen to any of these. I probably should have gotten to them. But yeah, I think if anything is going to get in, it's probably going to be the Bono song, which I really like you too. But how cool would it be if these two things won? But it's really cool that these two things got nominated, where you have a song by Bono nominated and you have a song by his daughter nominated for Flora and Son, because Eve Houston sings that
Oh,
song.
cool.
So there you go. I would love to see this what is it, 40-Foot Man and High Life both win.
Louis, any thoughts on songs from documentary?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ditto. This lineup. With all due respect, because I haven't seen any of these documentaries. With all due respect to them, or the songs, because I haven't heard of these songs. I mean, the independent film lineup looks like juggernauts compared to this. Like, because I have just not really heard of these, so I don't think any of these are necessarily kicking off their Oscar campaigns with this.
But yeah, and then moving on to the next one, we've got song from animated movie. We've got Steal the Show from Elemental, which is performed by Lauv, Lauv. Down Like That from Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. Am I Dreaming from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, performed by ASAP Rocky. Better Place from Trolls Band Together from NSYNC. Peaches, performed by Jack Black from Super Mario Brothers. And This Wish from Wish, performed by Ariana DeBose. Look, Louis, what are your thoughts about songs from the animated movie?
Well, it's interesting to see Peaches here because there has been a little bit of talk that maybe that there's an outside shot that Mario could get a nomination for that. I think though that because Barbie is in the mix, it could be trouble for Peaches to get in because usually we don't get really we get one, maybe two fun songs. So I'm Just Ken is kind of the fun song. Whereas Peach, and on top of that, Barbie's obviously a bigger contender than Mario, and Mario's like, it's probably arguably might be an underdog to even get into animated feature. Even though however popular the movie was with audiences and the money that it made, This Wish from Wish could be interesting. That could be the Disney song that gets in instead of obviously Little Mermaid. But there is still the show from Elemental. I know you weren't crazy about, if I remember right, you weren't crazy about the song Malcolm, but I really like the song. But it's going to be interesting to see if both Elemental and Wish can get a song in. I have a feeling that only one of these two will find a way in, but I would be surprised if both of them don't get at least into the short list. It'll be interesting to see if I Am Dreaming could get into that short list, because to really see, for the folks who still believe Across the Spider-Verse has a shot to get into picture, to see if how much support it can get in other categories. Yeah, I'm not going to make a prediction because this seems a little bit more competitive here, and I can see a situation where Elemental or Wish or Spider-Man, or maybe even the Peaches wins. It would be a better place. It's interesting with the NSYNC reunion there. Even though I know there's a little bit of controversy regarding Justin Timberlake of late. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if which one of these is going to be that animated feature contender that gets a song in there, because I do think these are. I know last year I think it was Pinocchio got the big snub in song. I think this year I gotta believe either Elemental or Wish are going to get a song in there.
I mean, I wouldn't say that the Pinocchio song was actually a big snub, because I think it's just a case of even last year there's a lot of songs that could have just got in as a big. But Chad, what are your thoughts about song from animated?
I did actually listen to all of these, and to be honest, most of them seem very, very generic pop to me. Even Am I Dreaming, I was like, this might be a little bit elevated, but maybe that could just be the quality of the movie, and the music for the Spider-Man animated movies are normally pretty great. So I'd have to re-listen to it to see if I think it's actually really good, or if it's just me relating it to the movie that feels that way. Yeah, Better Place I thought was generic. Steal the Show and Down Like That. I'm sure the movies are really cute and stuff, but I think those were all pretty generic. This Wish, I think, is a legitimate, like, good song, and I could see that one sneaking into like an Oscar thing if I had to pick any of them. My favorite out of the slate is Peaches, though, because it's so interesting. It's like a minute and a half song, and it's so short and simple, and it's just Jack Black doing his thing. But I think that's what's so great about it. Like, it's just him saying peaches a lot of the time, but he's putting so much passion into saying peaches and all the other stuff. He's like, I want you, Peach, kind of a deal. And I'm just like, I love that. So that's the only one that I wanted to listen to multiple times when I listened through all of them. So I don't think it's going to get a nomination at the Oscars, but I hope it wins here. I think it could be a really cool win for that movie. Yeah.
Dylan, what are your thoughts about the animated song?
I'm laughing because of these, I like them all except for one, and the one I didn't like is the one Chad loved. That just happens with us sometimes, though. I just think Peaches is a really good bit in the movie, but listening to it separately, it's like if you didn't know the context and if it was just listening to it, like I don't think the song itself is anything particular great. I think it's just a great moment of acting from Jack Black and improv in that moment and stuff. I think it plays well in that movie. But like Luis said, with I'm Just Ken coming out, like that kind of takes up the slot of like that was a great moment in the movie, memorable dance sequence. Like I think that kind of took Peach's Oscar chances away. This Witch I've only heard from that trailer, but I think because that trailer is played so much, it's either going to be like an Into the Unknown Frozen 2 thing where it's played so much that people are like, well, I'm going to nominate that, or it's going to play so much where it's like, oh God, I've heard the song too much. But Let It Go made it in and it won. So I guess if a song is played over and over and over again and people love it, it might get in. I actually think of all these, my favorite is the Spider-Verse song, but I think Better Place may have the best Oscar chances just because of the NSYNC reunion aspect of it, like NSYNC getting back together to record it. But then, as Luis also said, the Justin Timberlake controversy, I don't know if that's going to help or hurt it. Obviously, it wouldn't help it, but I do think if we're looking for that fifth slot, like right now I have 2 Barbie songs, Diane Warren and the Lenny Kravitz song from Rustin in there. My fifth slot, I think right now I'm leaning toward the Trolls song because of NSYNC and because I think just what is it? Can't Stop the Feeling got in, right? For the first Trolls, the Justin Timberlake song. Did that get in for an Oscar? Yeah. So I think there's a potential for it. We see a lot of like kids movies that aren't even animated feature nominees, like Despicable Me 2 or 3 with Happy getting in. Like I think sometimes those songs get in even if the movies aren't very well regarded. And I think regardless of how Trolls is, I could see that getting in as an Oscar nominee just because of the NSYNC factor. And I think when you look at all the, I mean, I guess Jack Black has that too. Like when you look at all the artists, like awarding NSYNC with a win is really cool. Whereas like Jack Black winning would also be very cool, but the other ones, it's more about like the actual composers than it is about the singers. So it's going to be very interesting. I think this is a very competitive category because there is no clear front runner.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's one of those ones like this is really interesting because one, like the Oscars could like there's a lot of chances that you can get like 3 actors on that stage singing, which is I don't think it's ever happened before. Like the majority of their best song nominations have been mostly actors. Because you got Ariana DeBose for This Wish, you got Jack Black for Peaches, you got Ryan Gosling for I'm Just Ken. I mean, you arguably you got Timberlake for Better Place as well. And I must have my head in the sand because I had no idea there was controversy about Justin Timberlake. But yeah, this is one of those ones like, and it's not that I'm not too fussed about the song Elemental. I just don't remember the song Elemental. And
fair enough.
So yeah. I mean, I think if one of these gets in, it's probably more than likely going to be maybe either Trolls or The Swish, just because they're going to be the most recent ones that come out, so they're going to be the ones that are most recently in the people's minds. But yeah, but that being said, and I'm not kidding when I say this, I think there's a good for winning this specific category. I think it could be Paw Patrol: The Mighty Movie. Because, well, no, the reason I say that is when the first one came out, the movie that won Best Animated Song was Paw Patrol, the movie, for the song "Good Mood" performed by and that bet the Sing 2 song performed by Bono.
They might just
So
award it because their kids really love it, and they're like, "I'll vote for this because my kid loves Paw Patrol." It could happen. And
yeah,
hey,
no,
Did that
I
beat-
wouldn't be
what
mad.
it-
It's a cute movie.
Did that beat
Yeah.
Encanto also? Was that the year of
Enca-
Encanto?
uh,
I think it
if
was the
it
year
was,
before.
Encanto wasn't nominated.
I think it was 2020.
Oh.
Nominated and animated. Yeah, this was it would have been the 12th, which would have been the So it was the 2021 awards, which
That's
the
Encanto.
nominations were well. So whether or not Disney just didn't submit a song from it in advance, because Encanto wasn't even nominated for best original score. So in the year I'm talking about here, nominated for best original song from animated movie, you had "Good Mood" from Paw Patrol the movie, "Fearless" from Spirit Untamed, "Follow Me Home" from Arlo the Alligator Boy, "On My Way" from the Mitchells versus the Machines, "Together We Stand" from the Boss Baby Family Business,
That's
and your song
2021.
"Save My Life" from Sing 2. So no Encanto was nominated.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. It's like, because I completely forgot about that. It's like, but maybe Disney just didn't submit something.
You know what
or
though?
something
Because
happened.
the nominations come up early November. Maybe they didn't want to show We Don't Talk About Bruno yet. They didn't want to reveal it yet, so they didn't submit it. Maybe they just didn't
Well,
submit any of their songs because they wanted it to be a surprise.
I mean, it's fine. Like, it's fine if they want to like save Bruno, but yeah. Anyway, some other categories they do have, which I will talk about, and I mean, actually, I'll ignore some of these and go just straight to scores. Because they also they have a category called for song on screen performance. So you've got
Ryan
like
Gosling.
high.
Yeah, it's Ryan Gosling. That's gonna be it.
Well, I mean, it probably could be, but it's also interesting because you've got two Halle Bailey songs here as well. Because you got "For the First Time" from Little Mermaid and "Keep It Moving" from The Color Purple. And then
Amazing.
you've got Megan Thee Stallion for "Out Alpha the Alpha" from Dix the Musical.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to score. The nominations for score for animated movie. You've got Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget, Elemental, Migration, Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and the Super Mario Brothers movie. And yeah, this is interesting because I think if any of these scores get nominated for best score at the Oscars, I think it's probably most likely either Elemental or Spider-Man. Um, I'm surprised they remembered Ruby Gillman to nominate it. But Dylan, what do you thought about score for animated movie?
I don't even care who wins. Where is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor's score for that movie was so good. And I don't really like that movie, but that score is amazing. And for a category that's score for an animated film, you don't even have to compete with live action. That should have been like number 1 or 2. Like, I'm surprised that didn't even make the 5 when movies like Migration, which no one's even seen yet, and then Ruby Gillman, which no one saw when it was out, and then Chicken Run, which also no one's seen yet. Like, I get it, the scores were submitted, but it's like, I'm shocked TMNT is not here. And I think that makes it even easier for Spider-Verse right now. I don't see Spider-Verse losing this. I actually think Spider-Verse, regardless of a Best Picture nomination, is getting in score at the Oscars. I think it's like number 5 right now. It could lose, but I think there's a very good chance we'll see Spider-Verse in because that score is so good. Like, all the little moments of Miles realizing things in the movie, it's not sound, it's score, where like there'll be like kind of I don't know the right words for, like, kind of like in Halloween where it's like a certain sting, but that's still the score. Like, John Carpenter's putting a musical sting there, just like they did in Across the Spider-Verse. I think that score is brilliant for how it is used in the movie, and I hope Daniel Pemberton gets that nomination. I think that's a clear winner here, though I do love Thomas Newman's score for Elemental. It is still a little familiar to other Thomas Newman things. I mean, Chad and I just covered The Green Mile. It sounds similar, same as Finding Nemo. Like, there's a lot of Thomas Newman scores that feel very similar. American Beauty, we also covered. So I think right now, Daniel Pemberton right now is the clear favorite for me here, and I don't think it's close.
All right, we'll get into Trent Reznor a little bit later. But Chad, what are your thoughts about score for animated?
I don't disagree with Dylan here. Looking through all the nominees, I feel like Spider-Man is the biggest like talk, and I agree with him about how the score is used in the movie, and I think just those Spider-Man movies, like I don't think it'll get like an editing nomination, stuff like that, but just like all the technicals, are just really, really great with that movie. Score is no different. Although, if I were to champion anything else, it would always be an Aardman Nick Park film. So I would love to see Chicken Run 2 win, even though I haven't seen it, haven't heard the score. But if anything else I would give it to, it would be that Sight Unseen, Score Unheard.
Louis, what are your thoughts about the animated scores?
Yeah, I think Elemental and Across the Spider-Verse are the only ones who have a shot to get an Oscar nomination here. I thought it was kind of cool to see Super Mario Brothers there because I thought the score was pretty okay. The thing that does stick out to me though, and by the way, I do think that Spider-Verse is probably the best shot to get a nomination. I've seen some people predicting Elemental instead to get in there. And look, as much as I personally really liked Elemental, that movie, its win is if it gets nominated for animated feature, whereas Spider-Verse is the front runner win animated feature, has an outside shot to get into picture. So I think if anything, Spider-Verse is the animated movie that could get into score. But to me, one interesting thing that I would point out is that, and we know for a fact that because we've mentioned it before, that they've heard stuff from this movie. Wish didn't get in. And that's interesting to me because it's a big Disney film coming out. So maybe the score isn't that great compared to maybe the music. I'll see for myself because I get to see Wish next week. But that's something that stuck out to me, that that Wish did not show up here, even though it was a simple category of just animated films.
Yeah, I mean, I completely didn't register that Wish wasn't there until it was mentioned. But it could just be one of those ones that maybe they just think because it's a musical, and that like the songs is what pushing the movie through, and the score is just not really there. Yeah, so it'll be interesting if Spider-Verse gets in, because Into the Spider-Verse I think didn't get in for score that year, the year that came out. So so they maybe that is like, well, we didn't give it then, maybe we'll get it in here this time around. But once again, score is a very tough race because when we get into score for feature film, it's going to be, I think this is where a lot of the nominations are going to come from. And the feature film score, we've got American Fiction, Chevalier, Killers of the Flower Moon, Naiad, Oppenheimer, Rustin, Saltburn, and The Killer, which is done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I know I didn't go for the other ones, but like I think Trent Reznor will have a chance here. But Dylan, what are you actually, Louise? What are your thoughts about feature film score?
Well, I'm not surprised that Oppenheimer is here. I think there's some people are making pretty good cases that might be our front runner to win score. So interesting to see Saltburn in here. I'm not, I don't know. I think this might be a bit of an outside shot to get in there. Killers of the Flower Moon, I can see getting in there. I don't think Naiad has a shot to get in there. I think Naiad's chances are all based on the acting. I do think it's interesting that American Fiction showed up here. Not just, I still think I would say it's a long shot to get into Oscar nomination, but it's interesting to me because it's these little things that you want to pay attention to, especially since there's a lot of talk as to whether American Fiction could be that small movie that surges and maybe takes down a big film for picture. So it's interesting to me that it did show up in score here, because if that ends up saying making this. Is there a short list for score? I forget, or is that just
There
a
is,
short
but
list for song?
it's not out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there is a, well, I was gonna say that if there when the short list for score comes out, if American Fiction is on there, that to me would be very interesting. Not that it would make me necessarily predict it, but it would be very interesting to see if that's a sign of that movie's potential strength. But I think what this tells me is that Oppenheimer is still very strongly, arguably maybe the front runner to win score.
But Chadwick, what are your thoughts about score for feature film?
I actually don't disagree. I don't know if Oppenheimer's like definitely going to win like Best Picture, but like going on to score, I think it's very strong. I think Christopher Nolan, if known for anything, is known for being just technical marvel like The Dark Knight and Inception and even Interstellar, that wasn't like beloved on like a story level by everyone. Still, everyone could look at the technicals and go, "Holy shit, this one is crazy." And Oppenheimer's no different. That one, it's more of like a drama biopic, but like the technicals with how they do like all the sound and stuff like that is really great, and the score is pretty great too. I mean, you got Ludwig Göransson. He won for Black Panther, right? So definitely already a winner. If I could see anything competing, just because I haven't seen most of these, I even haven't seen The Killer, but I know that Trent and Atticus are kind of Oscar darlings. So, maybe that will give them an edge in this as well. And I'm pretty sure the score for The Killer is interesting. I mean, just, listen to the Social Network score sometimes. It's really, really interesting. So, yeah, it would probably be one of those two, but probably Oppenheimer.
And Dylan, what are your thoughts about score?
Yeah, I definitely agree that Oppenheimer's the front runner here. I mean, for a 3-hour movie where 2 hours and 50 minutes of it is scored, I think that's just very impressive. Like the score kind of takes you on that emotional journey. There's a amazing part of the film where it's very early on. Someone tells Oppenheimer, I think it's Kenneth Branagh's character, Niels Bohr, tells him like, "You must face the music, Robert. Do you hear the music?" And then it cuts to a shot of the mountains, and you hear Louis Göransson's score go like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's the most amazing editing cut in that movie, and it's so amazing because he literally says, "Can you hear the music?" And then boom, this beautiful score. I just think that movie is so. I mean, I love it so much, but that score is so well done. But I think people are sleeping on Killers of the Flower Moon. Robbie Robertson obviously passed away this year, so this would be a posthumous win or a posthumous nomination. And that score is so good. It's almost played solely on like these kind of authentic Osage instruments, and I love the kind of guitar kind of underlying, it almost feels like a Western, that score. So I really, really like that score. I think those are the two that are going to be competing for the Oscar. It's going to be like those two and a few others. I actually agree with Luis in the fact that American Fiction getting this nomination shows how strong the film in general is across a lot of bodies. I think when it won the TIFF Audience Award, a lot of us, Chad and myself included, were like, what is this movie? What is it really going to get into Best Picture? Because every time a TIFF movie wins Best Audience Award, it gets into Best Picture. And I was like, well, it's getting into Best Picture. And Chad was like, not so fast. And I was like, I agree. It's like weird that this movie's just popping up. But I think now in the weeks coming, with Jeffrey Wright now looking like a Best Actor nominee, and then this coming up in score, I think there's a good chance, because you look at a film when it gets a Best Picture nomination, usually it has a few other nominations in its package, and I think this could be another one that American Fiction gets in its package. It's also a female composer, which is a kind of cool little tidbit as well. I think those three scores are the three we could see in Oscar contention: American Fiction, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer, along with Spider-Verse, which I just said, and then one more, which we may talk about later, that I think is hopefully a shoe-in. I don't know yet. But yeah, this is, I think, an Oppenheimer win, but I'd like to see Robbie Robertson get awarded a nomination for an Oscar for Killers of the Flower
Moon. But yeah, like I agree with everything that you all have said. Like, I think Oppenheimer, I think, is a shot. I think Killers of the Flower Moon, like, I haven't seen. I'm still good to get around to actually seeing that movie. Just finding time to watch a 3.5-hour movie is hard. But yeah, and just on the note of Nayad, I do think we may see Alexander Desplat nominated, but not for Nighthead. We'll get into that in
Interesting.
a little bit. We'll get into that in a little bit because in the past 20 years, he's been nominated 11 different times. And like the last time he won, he was nominated twice. Um, so I mean the Academy loves Desplat. And um, But moving on to score for a science fiction fantasy movie, we've got Asteroid City done by Alexander Desplat, Barbie, Mark Ronson and Andrew Wright, The Creator, scored by Hans Zimmer, The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songs and Snakes by James Newton Howard, The Marvels, and Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, and yeah, and actually, fun fact, I only just realised the Marvels is the same composer as American Fiction.
Mhm.
um, I totally didn't realize until I saw the names. Like, hang on, I saw that name before. But yeah, like I think if anything, I think Asteroid City's score is really good. And I think that if Alexander Desplat gets in, it's going to be for Asteroid City. I know he wasn't nominated for the Oscars for French Dispatch. But I think the last Wes Anderson movie he was nominated for was the one he won, which is Grand Budapest. But that being said, like the Oscars do love Desplat. I think he's just one of those composers which I think has a good shot. Whether or not Asteroid City sneaks in, I don't know. This is really tough to predict. But and I mean, you can't even go past Hans Zimmer either. It's like he's another big name which gets into. Once again, I'm still going to get around seeing The Creator, but unfortunately for the other like genre ones, I think if like Barbie may get in. But once again, that movie is more on the songs side
Mhm.
than it is the actual score. But strange things have happened, and I think if Barbie's going to be this big contender we think it might be, I think score it could get in score as well. And I just don't think Hunger Games, the Marvels, or Transformers are going to get it. Dylan, what are your thoughts about sci-fi fantasy score?
Yeah, I actually don't have any of these in my predicted 5 for the Oscars, only because I really want to put Desplat in there for Asteroid City, but seeing how the French Dispatch should have been a shoe-in for production design and score and didn't get either, and this is obviously, I think, by many people's standards, a better movie. I still like French Dispatch a little bit more, but I think my only fear is that Wes Anderson movies, they just get criminally overlooked at the Oscars, and that's my biggest fear. And Pinocchio, he was supposed to get nominated for last year and was famously snubbed for that. So I don't know if the Desplat thing is as like sure thing as it used to be, but I think of all these films and nominations, he's the most likely. I think if Asteroid City is probably like 6 or 7 for that category, I think it's definitely on the bubble. I think Barbie, as you said, yeah, it's more of a song movie than a score movie, but I think you could see if like the creator picks up. I think the creator right now is the front runner for visual effects. I think if it just they want to give a few more text to it, that could pick it up. Hunger Games, as I said earlier, I think they're really leaning into the angle of music for that film. So like anything can happen. I think Desplat will win this award at the Hollywood Music and Media Awards, but I just don't know if any of these are going to get any Oscars, especially because I think we're going to see more of like the Best Picture films get nominations, and the only Best Picture film here is Barbie, and even then, I don't think the score for Barbie is going to be what gets in. So
Yeah,
I don't have high hopes for any of these for Oscars, but of these 5, I think, or 6, I think Asteroid City is the best.
yeah. I mean, just to quickly touch on the French Dispatch. I think had it been an ordinary Oscar year, I think French Dispatch might have snuck in there. I think I think that one is really tough to predict how it would have gone because that was also the year they extended their eligibility because of COVID.
Right.
So who knows what could have
True.
happened if there was this typical Oscar year. So because I think this is this is the first full year we've had for Oscars since that because like obviously last year we had it from like March and that. So
Right.
is it
Right.
this is going to be interesting. But Chad, what are your thoughts about score for sci-fi fantasy?
I don't have a lot of thoughts. If I had to pick something, maybe Barbie, but like mainly I'm interested in the creator and the Hunger Games ones, just because of the names attached. It's a little annoying that Hans Zimmer could win this one, and yet this is the year that Johnny Greenwood decided not to do 3 scores and still lose to Dune, which was a phenomenal score. And then what if Johnny Greenwood does a lot next year? He has to go up against Dune too.
Exactly.
So annoying. But I would pick probably one of those two. Personally, I don't know about Asteroid City, but just because of what Dylan said, that they're just kind of normally not slept on or whatever. But
yeah, moving on to another category which gets left out a lot.
Well, Malcolm, you didn't let me get my say.
So, Lewis, what are your thoughts about sci-fi fantasy?
Well, I mean, I mean, I won't add much. I think Asteroid City's a long shot. I don't know if the creator can get in just because that movie's reception isn't particularly great. I know it's got its fans. I like the movie, but I'm not sure it can get in there. I don't think Hunger Games or Marvels could get in there. Transformers. Barbie, I would agree. I don't think it's going to get into score, but it would be interesting if on nomination morning it does get into score. If on nomination morning it does get into score, that would be a potential sign that it's going to have a little bit of a bigger nomination haul that maybe even the most bullish folks on that movie were expecting. But yeah, I think it's either Barbie maybe finds a way to sneak in or Asteroid City finds a way to sneak in.
Yeah. But yeah, moving on into a category which gets largely ignored at the Oscars, and it's School for Horror Thriller. And yeah, nominated in here we've got, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce a lot of these composers because at least just because I know Matt read a lot of stuff with one of them with when the Joker came out, but yeah, so nominated for School for Horror Thriller, we've got A Haunting in Venice, Deliver Us, Knock at the Cabin, Megan, The Boogeyman, and The Exorcist Believer got it. Which I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. I can't say anything about the score. I know people just don't like the movie at all, but yeah, I think if I'm going to go for the score for either of these, I think The Haunting in Venice, it might be the one that wins. But although I do really like the score for Megan, Louise, what are your thoughts about School for Horror Thriller?
Yeah, I don't think any of these are particularly top, like Oscar contenders, anything like that. If I had to guess, I would also go with Haunting in Venice, just because Hilder is pretty well known and has won an Oscar. So yeah, I would say that maybe Haunting in Venice is the only one here that I can see maybe having a shot at making some noise.
Chad, what are your thoughts for School of Horror Thriller?
Yeah, I think like the big name would probably be A Haunting in Venice because it's a Branagh film. Hilder won for the Joker, or not the Joker, just Joker, and stuff. But I've heard, I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but I've heard that the Boogeyman might have like a lot of like atmosphere and stuff. So I'm wondering if that has like a really good score as well. I think the other ones just I don't really remember the scores from them in particular, but like A Haunting in Venice is the one that's like a movie that like feels like it bridges the Oscar and the horror more than the rest of them do. So yeah, I would go with that one probably too.
Yeah, and before I go to Dylan, I haven't really been looking at the comments. Brian had put a few things in here, but the one I'm actually just going to highlight is this one. And this is why I think Super Mario Bros. Probably wouldn't have a chance for the Oscars anyway, because it's because they do mix in that score from the game. I think that I don't know how much they did it, because once again I've never played the games, but because of that, I think there's a rule that it says it has to be like 75% original or some number like that. So I think there's been a lot of controversy in the past for that. So I don't think depending on how much they do it, I think Mario might struggle with on that account. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about score for horror thriller?
That was a perfect segue to what I was going to say because The Exorcist Believer, the only memorable moments of that score are the ones that we saw in 1973. So I don't know why that's nominated. But hey,
Tubular bells, yeah.
to each their own. The best part of that movie in terms of the score is the stuff we've heard for decades. But of the other ones, yeah, I haven't seen Deliver Us or The Boogeyman, Knock at the Cabin and Megan. Couldn't remember the scores. Haunting in Venice, I don't even remember the score very well, but Hilda Guðnadóttir is obviously a name at this point. She should have won an Oscar for Women Talking last year for score. I'll stand by that. She was also instrumental in Tar, making the music for Tar. So I think she's just so well respected at this point that her not winning would be a big shock.
But moving on, go very quickly over some of these because I think people probably won't know much about these. But score for independent movie, we've got Daliland, Dream Scenario, Jules, which is Volker Bertelmann, who did All Quiet on the Western Front. Miranda's Victim, She Came to Me, and The Zone of Interest. Anyone got any thoughts on independent score? Dylan?
Me. So earlier when I said that I think it's going to be Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, American Fiction, Spider-Man, and then I was leaving one out, it's The Zone of Interest because that score, whether you love that movie, whether you hate that movie, whether you sit through 2 minutes of it and then leave or the whole thing, you're going to hear the score. And I'm going to play a little snippet of it because during the credits, I was like, this score is so cool that I wanted to record it. But like, it's so eerie and creepy. It's like all this weird experimental music that is just so, I don't know if it came through well on the mic, but you have to see it to believe it. That score is, I'll tell you right now, I don't love that movie, but that score is so good. I hope it gets nominated for an Oscar. I don't know if it will, but if it is a Best Picture contender, Zone of Interest, and it gets in Best Director, which I think it might, I think there's a good chance it could get scored just as another one of its, like I said, package earlier with American Fiction. Like I think it could be part of the package for Zone of Interest, and I would love Michael Levy to get that nomination because that score is so good. They use it very briefly throughout the movie, sporadically, but when they use it, like the first 5 minutes of the movie is just utter blackness, and you're just listening to the score. Same as like the last 5 minutes, it's just score, and it's so good. I can't wait for people to just soak this into their eardrums and go home scared as little kittens. So yeah, I love this score so much, and that's the one I hope gets an Oscar nomination. That's all.
Moving on to score documentary, the nominations is we've got Kangaroo Valley, Split at the Root, still a Michael J. Fox movie, The Deepest Breath, and The Pigeon Channel. Anyone any thoughts for score documentary? I mean, the only noticeable name here is John Powell, he did the Michael J. Fox one, so that might be the winner here. But other than that, yeah. Then the only last one I will talk about, and the only one which is really nominating the movie over the thing, and it's like they've got category for best music themed movie or musical. And the nominees we've got is Carmen, The Little Mermaid, Theatre Camp, Trolls Band Together, and Wonka. But Dylan, what are your thoughts about music themed movie or musical?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to judge it by what their favorite movie is or how it used music. And it says music themed film, so I guess that's why Barbie didn't count because Barbie had so much music, but maybe it's because they wanted to make movies or nominate movies about music. But then why didn't Flora and Son get nominated? Because that's all about music. That's kind of where it's a weird discrepancy of like what exactly qualifies, what they're going to award. But I think if they're just going for a film that kind of encompasses music in a very interesting way, I think actually Carmen is probably the best one of these five. I mean, it uses the ballet music so beautifully. I don't think a lot of people have seen that movie, but it's great. Melissa Barrera and Paul Mescal are great in it. But I think it uses music the most interestingly of them all. Whereas Little Mermaid, it's a musical. It's a Disney musical. If you've seen the animated, you know what the live action is going to be with some little twists. Wonka, we haven't seen, but it sounds like it's going to be a musical. So who knows if that's a great movie? It could get it. Theater Camp, I really like the little songs they add to it. It's all about theater and musicals, but there's really only one like standout song, whereas the rest of it's more about being at just a musical camp. And then Trolls Band Together, obviously in sync. It's all about them as a band, so that has that effect. But I think of these nominees, then Carmen would be the most deserving. But I think it's probably going to be either Wonka or Little Mermaid, because those are the most just like overall musicals. Like those are the ones that are going to be like the big blockbuster musicals this year. So,
Chad, what are your thoughts about the music themed movie or musical?
I'm pretty similar. I haven't seen Carmen or Trolls Band Together or Wonka. I've seen parts of Little Mermaid, but not the whole thing. I do think it might end up being Little Mermaid or Wonka because those are like big name movies. But I haven't seen it, but I'm pulling for Wonka. I don't think Paul King is gonna disappoint. And so I just think it just feels like a really good like awards movie that it's going to be. It could be bad. I don't know, but I'm hoping and thinking it's going to be really awesome. So, and I think people will probably like it more than Little Mermaid. And Theater Camp is cute, but I just don't see that being a contender in much.
Louise, what are your thoughts about music themed movie or musical?
Well, it's interesting that they have Wonka in here, which makes me wonder: did they actually get to see a cut of the movie, or like I don't understand like what's going on? Is this just based on the songs altogether, or is it based on the movie itself as well? Because if they have Wonka in here, then I would guess that they got to see a cut of the movie. But then that makes me wonder, because this says music themed film or musical. Then that means that there's a certain potential big movie that is not showing up here that is a musical, and that's The Color Purple. So the question is, maybe they didn't have it ready to show them, but they were able to let them listen to certain songs that got nominated, or did they see the movie and it didn't get in? Because if they saw the movie and didn't get in, that's a potential red flag, because we have so many questions as to what kind of contender that movie's going to be. So that's what really popped up to me looking at these. So I don't know what's up there. So again, Color Purple is just such a massive question mark. It is interesting that Wonka's in here. Trolls Band Together makes sense because the Trolls movies are very music based. Theater Camp is kind of interesting to have there. Little Mermaid's obviously a musical, and Carmen, I believe, has music. I haven't seen that one yet. It is on my watch list. I should be watching it sometime in the coming weeks. But yeah, that I would say this is the thing that stuck out to me, is that The Color Purple was not there. So the question is, which unfortunately I think we can get the answer to, is that is it because they didn't get to see the movie, or did they see the movie and it wasn't good enough for them to be in there? Because if they saw the movie and it wasn't good enough to be in there, but say Theater Camp was, is that a potential red flag about how far that movie can go into award season?
Yeah, and that's the only reason I decided to do a big discussion on this specific one, because I too have that same feeling. Because another big one that may not have as big of a splash, but especially in one category, there's no Wish either. Wish, the big front runner for animated, isn't here, and that's a animated musical. So I was that's going to be an interesting one. Depending on
another one I just thought of, Maestro, also not here.
Maestro is once again Maestro is. Depending on how much music that they like. This is one of those categories I don't quite understand what they mean by it either. It's I get your point about Maestro at the same stage. It's definitely one of those ones. I know this award show also celebrates TV shows and stuff. I'm not going to go through all the categories because we're already running a long time as it is.
Thank you.
But I will say I'm really glad that Richard the Pickwick Triplets got nominated for Only Murders in the Building. I love that. I love that song. But with that being said, that it does bring us to the end of Gone with the Wind for this week. But Dylan, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me right here. Dill Pickle Movie Network is my channel on YouTube. We also have the Dill Pickle podcast, Dill Pickle TikTok. We're branching out where we do a bunch of shows. I do a show about So Bad They're Good Movies called Frame Wreck. I do a show about Marvel called Marvelous Movie Mondays, which I need to post because I haven't posted mine today. Sorry, Kels. I do a show called Draft Day where we draft things. I do a Recipe for Reality where we talk about reality TV. And with this guy, I saved the best for last. Picture This, where we talk about Best Picture nominees through all the years. We're doing Color Purple year 85 next month or this month for that, and then next month we're going to be doing a Christmas themed one around 1960, The Apartment. So sorry to tease that. You got a little sneak peek, anyone who's listening. And yeah, follow me at Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter, and be on the lookout for Band on the Run coming next year to a theater near you. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, there could be some openings in theaters, so
right. Seems the day. Carpe diem. You know?
But Chad, we can be on you online.
Yeah, please check out the Dill Pickle Movie Network because that guy puts in so much hard work over there, and a lot of the shows are pretty great. I'm on some of them, not all of them, but mainly I do Picture This. It's really fun, and we have a lot of really great discussions. And if you want to take on the task of watching every Best Picture nominee known to man at the Oscars, then it's a good watch along. If you're trying to do that, so check that show out. Check out my channel, Chadwick Webb, where I rank things and do other stuff like reviews and whatnot and reactions. Check out the Nerd Entertainment Network, where I have a show called Welcome to Primetime, and we just talk horror. It's me, my wife, and my buddy Hunter. And we rank Buffy and stuff like that as well. Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like that as well. Check out my letterbox. That's pretty much it.
And Louise, where can people find you online?
Just go to mendesmoviereport.com. Takes you to my 100% free Substack newsletter. I don't charge for anyone for reading that. I try to get at least one weekly review of a film I watched, a new film that I watch, Oscar projections. Hopefully, we'll be getting back to doing some classic movie lists. And Facebook, Instagram, Twitter/X, Threads, Letterbox, Mendes Movie RPT, and that's where you can find me.
Yeah, you can find me on Tape Productions hosting Gone Off the Win every week. You can also find me hosting Rankum every Sunday. This week we're doing top 12 Paul Giamatti movies. Chad's going to be there.
Yeah.
And you can also find me doing a bunch of stuff. I pop up on Movie Hero Net from time to time. I believe I'll be on it this week for top 12 DC for TZ characters. And I also host Full Metal Singles, and which is just fun trivia, and yeah, that happens every week as well. This week we've got a match with Austin taking on Jordan Huffman. But with that, that is the end of the show for today, and I'm just going to go out with this clip.
I'm a nerd. Okay.